Chapter 1749. Qi Xianxian spat at Ko Dihai. I don't even know what you're talking about. You're like a mad dog, going around biting people as soon as you come in. It's really scary. As she spoke, she even pretended to be afraid and patted her chest twice to show her fear. Family head Do was so angry that he was about to ascend to the heavens. He raised a finger and pointed at her. You've been talking for a long time, but you still haven't said anything. In fact, Ko Dihai wasn't completely sure that the poison in his son's body was from Arbor. Who are you? Arbor bluntly asked. Family head Do was so angry that his nostrils flared as he huffed and puffed. What was more infuriating than messing around for a long time, but the other party didn't even know who you were. Tang Qing couldn't help but twitch her mouth. This is family head Do. The young master who had a conflict with this little brother in your team is family head Do's son. Oh, this was a classic case of hitting the young and the old coming. Arbor didn't want to waste any more words with Ko Dihai. She coldly looked at him, her eyes filled with ridicule. Bringing a group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals, he broke into the underground fighting arena and wanted to capture her, Ko Hongwen, and the others. Wasn't this person's thinking a bit too idealistic? Ko Dihai naturally saw the mockery in her eyes. His heart was filled with anger, and his old eyes immediately turned cold. You. Before Ko Dihai could finish his sentence, he found that his body had been sent flying in a strange manner. What was going on? When his head hit the seat heavily, a few people who were watching the competition jumped up in fright. Ko Dihai then found that he had been sent flying by a huge force. The source of this huge force was the little fat squirrel. It silently retracted its fat white tail and jumped into Arbor's arms. Arbor looked down and suddenly reached out to poke the fat squirrel's head. Qiuqiu didn't know when it had gained another little tail. This was really strange. Now, the fat squirrel had two tiny tails wagging behind its butt. It didn't look too strange. The other people in the contestant area sucked in a breath of cold air. At first, they thought that Arbor's lychee team hadn't brought out a useful mystical beast for so many hours because their family background wasn't too good. But now, someone else had a beast that was comparable to a small pet. It was fine if it didn't show its might, but once it showed its might, it could send an 8th-level spiritual master flying out of the sky without hesitation. This was simply incomprehensible. Perhaps their reaction arc was too slow. They felt that the scene just now was as if their eyes were playing tricks on them. That fat squirrel was only slightly bigger than a palm, so how could it have so much energy? What happened? Young Master Ding, who had heard the news, walked over with a gentle expression. However, when he looked at Ko Dihai, there was a trace of coldness that could not be easily detected. Ko Dihai was stunned. He turned around and glanced at young Master Ding. Immediately, he was speechless. Young Master Ding did not come alone. He had brought 300 guards with him and appeared in front of everyone in such a grand manner. When Ko Dihai saw this, his eyelids twitched violently. His face was a little embarrassed. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but the situation was stronger than him. He had to take a step back first. After a long while, House Master Ko flicked his sleeve and said angrily, "Let's go." Ding Yun's voice instantly turned cold. Stop them. Chapter 1750. Many guards behind young Master Ding swarmed forward and surrounded Ko Dihai and the others. Ko Dihai's expression suddenly changed. He turned and glared at young Master Ding. "Young Master, what do you want?" Young Master Ding sneered, "You are the Ko family head, right? Do you think that our Qian Luo underground arena is a place where anyone can come and go as they please? You want to catch someone, but you brought a group of people and barged in without saying a word. Now you want to leave, but you want to leave without saying a word. What is Qian Luo underground arena in your eyes?" Ko Dihai held back his anger and said kindly, "Young master, I acted without thinking, please forgive me." But today's matter is not targeted at Qian Luo Underground Arena. It's this young lady. This young lady is this young master's friend. Qian Luo Underground Arena has a reason to protect them. Ding Yun said lightly. Co-family head, as for you, when you attacked earlier, you destroyed some of the facilities in our underground fighting arena. Shouldn't you compensate us properly? Ko Dihai's face turned red when he heard this. He pointed at Ding Yun and said in a trembling voice, You. These people were simply too much. His son was watching the competition in the arena, but he was poisoned by an unknown poison and ran home screaming. He had brought people here to seek justice for his son. Was that wrong? Even if this justice could not be obtained now. He also hoped that the person who poisoned his son would remove the poison. Was this also wrong? But young Master Ko did not know that Miss Qiao had always been amenable to coaxing but not coercion. If you're here, apologize to her properly and say a few soft words. Maybe she'll give you the antidote. After all, it was not a big deal. But now, young Master Ko rushed in and wanted to catch someone. Not to mention that Arbor did not have a good temper. Even if he had a good temper, he would not be able to stand it. Let this Gu Hongzhen have a fat winter melon head and enjoy 15 days. Who told him to mock others as fat as a pig's head? Why not let him experience what it means to be as fat as a pig's head? Arbor did not want to talk to Ko Dihai anymore. After sitting down, he continued to watch the match. Ko Dihai's face was gloomy. He turned his head and looked at the little fatty who was sitting at the side and watching silently with cold eyes. Ko Hongwen. Ko Dihai sneered and said, Today's matter has developed to this extent, it must be your masterpiece. Do you dare to say that this has nothing to do with you? Little fatty could not help but say, It's Xie Hongzhen who is slandering me. When he thought of this, his face filled with anger. He wrongly accused me, saying that I stole the clan's spiritual medicine. How could the Ko family head not know about this? Ko Hongwen said angrily, The little tricks that Ko Hongwen has done behind my back, the patriarch should be fully aware of them. He caused me to be expelled from Dayo Academy. This is all his work. I've been in the academy for more than 2 years. How could Dayao Academy not know what I am? But after he caused me to leave Dayo Academy, he played all kinds of tricks behind my back, causing all the academies in Anka City to avoid me like the plague. Humph, such a person dares to walk in front of me and insult my friends so shamelessly. He only has himself to blame. Ko Dihai was furious. He raised his hand and was about to attack when young Master Ding signaled him with his eyes. Chapter 1751. Several guards drew their swords and pointed them at the Ko family head's chest and back. As long as he dared to move, the guards' swords would not let him go. Ko Dihai saw that the situation was beyond his control, so he had no choice but to flick his sleeves angrily and say to Arbor and the others, You win. Today, the people of Qian Luo's underground fighting arena will protect you. But don't forget, once you leave this underground fighting arena, I'll see who can protect you. Arbor glanced at him, then looked up at young Master Ding. She said expressionlessly, This person is talking nonsense in your underground fighting arena, and he doesn't care about you at all. How can you let him go out like this? Ko Dihai was stunned when he heard this, and his face instantly stiffened. His gaze towards Qiao Mu was simply as if he could swallow her whole. This damned girl instigated young Master Ding in front of the person involved. Won't she be beaten to death? Young Master Ding smiled gently. Qiao, if you don't want him to live, then I'll get someone to kill him. He's the Ko family head. Do you dare to do that? Aren't you afraid that your fighting arena will be destroyed? Young Master Ding couldn't help but sneer, It's just a small Ko family. If I kill him, he won't be able to find anyone to reason with. Arbor said, Oh, and didn't say anything else. Young Master Ding raised his eyebrows, Do you want me to do it? Arbor didn't say anything. She wouldn't be so stupid to ask him to kill someone. If he asked Ding Hao to take action now, wouldn't he owe Ding Hao a favor? What a joke, was Arbor's favor so easily given? He was just a small family head. If she didn't want him to live, she could do it herself. There was no need for others to do it. Young Master Ding saw that she didn't say anything and couldn't help but sigh, "Ah. Jojo still doesn't trust me." Arbor snorted. Trust? Was the word trust meant for him? How could she trust a wastrel? Young Master Ding blinked at her. Actually, if we spend more time together, you'll know that I'm actually a good person. Arbor chuckled and didn't say anything else. He just waved his little hand impatiently, indicating that he shouldn't disturb her from watching the game. Although this competition was most likely boring and she only wanted to sleep after watching it, Lin Yiqian still felt like sleeping. However, out of the 10 matches, there were still 1 or 2 exciting fights. As a result, Arbor felt that the group of people beside him was a bit of an eyesore. He wanted to chase them away as soon as possible. When Ko-Di saw that they only cared about themselves and completely ignored him, he couldn't help but feel angry and angry. Today, he originally wanted to capture Arbor and the others. Even if he had to settle for the second best, he wanted her to hand over the antidote. But now, not only had he failed to accomplish a single thing, he had even suffered a bellyful of anger for no reason at all. This made Ko-Di extremely furious. Young Master. At this time, Tang Cheng walked to young Master Ding's side and respectfully handed him a list. Young Master Ding shook the list and slowly read it out. Family head, your disciples destroyed 2 rows of seats in our underground fighting arena. They also made a section of the ground full of potholes. It's very ugly. This young master wants to find someone to fix it, and that will cost spirit coins. According to the list, the damaged items are worth 8,456 spirit coins. This young master reluctantly rounded up the remainder. You can give me 8,000 spirit coins. Chapter 1752. The Ko family head's expression was quite interesting to see. His face was alternating between green, white, and black. His eyes were glaring at young Master Ding as if they were about to shoot out flames. What? Do you have any objections to this compensation? Young Master Ding smiled and clapped his hands. Tang Cheng. Your subordinate is here. Steward Tang lowered his head and quickly walked forward. Suddenly, he shook his outer robe and tore off his shirt. Not only did he reveal all the muscles on his body, but there was also a burst of strong spiritual energy from his body. Everyone could feel the power of a level 9 spirit master. Everyone couldn't help but be stunned. This Qianluo underground battle arena really had a lot of resources. Even a seemingly unknown steward had the cultivation of a level 9 spirit master. No wonder no one dared to cause trouble at the Qianluo underground battle arena for so long. Everyone's respect for the Qianluo underground battle arena was not without reason. Everyone silently shut their mouths and waited for the situation to develop. The Ko family's patriarch's face was extremely ugly. After staring blankly for a long time, he suddenly took out a heavy bag of spirit coins from his inner world and placed it heavily on a nearby stool before turning to the group of Ko family disciples and saying, "Let's go." Qi Xianxian curled her lips and secretly sighed in pity. The Ko family's head had come all the way here just to give young Master Ding 8,000 spirit coins in the underground fighting arena. Arbor glanced at the Ko family head and then shifted her gaze to the arena. Young Master Ding looked at her helplessly and whispered to Steward Tang. Then, he led a group of people and left. Xiao Mu turned her head in astonishment and looked in the direction that young Sir Ding had left in. What's wrong? Qi Xianxian asked. Duanmu Qin couldn't help but whisper, this young master is very protective of Jojo. Ding Yun just ordered Steward Tang to lead people to deal with the Ko family head. Although his voice wasn't loud, with Arbor and Duanmu Qin's hearing, they naturally heard it. Arbor heard this and couldn't help but snort. With a proud expression, she said, "Who needs his help?" Qi Xianxian couldn't help but laugh. "Jojo, why do you dislike that young master so much?" Although she did not have much contact with Ding Yun, judging from his appearance, this young master Ding still looked like a dog, and his temperament seemed to be quite docile. It was just that if Jojo didn't like someone, they would more or less have a grudge against her. He guessed that child Ding had offended Jojo before. Arbor didn't say anything. After a while, he said crisply, "Even if he helped us drive away Cody High, I still won't be lenient when it comes to making money." What he meant was that she had won 28 spirit coins by betting on him. After she had won the bet, he couldn't give her a single cent less. Qi Xianxian immediately nodded, "Of course." But at that time, would young Master Ding lose so badly that he would cry? "At most, I'll give him 200 spirit coins as a tip." Miss Chiao's stingy nature immediately surfaced when she said this. Little Fatty couldn't help but twitch his mouth, but he still shook his head honestly and said, "Since you're giving it to me, we don't need to give it to you." Duan Muqin was speechless. What kind of teammates did he end up with? As they spoke, a staff member in front of the crystal screen reported the name of Team Longan. Mata and the others immediately rushed onto the field and fought against Team Frog, who had lost to Team Ox. Team Frog versus Team Longan. The atmosphere in the field was once again ignited. Chapter 1753. Will Dao Wuji be alright? The Peony Fairy couldn't help but mutter. The Ginkgo Fairy, who had a love-struck look on her face as she stared at the handsome man, unconsciously replied, "He looks so ordinary. Whether he dies or not has nothing to do with us. Big sister, why do you care about him?" The Peony Fairy was speechless. After all, she had imprisoned Dao Wuji for so long, so she was just saying that casually. The Luo brothers glanced at each other. Dao Wuji wasn't bad-looking, was he? It was just that in front of their boss and Yuan Shichen, he was a little lacking. But they shouldn't let him die just because he was average-looking. Yuan Shichen was a little curious. What kind of mystic beast do you think Dao Wuji encountered? Why hasn't he come out for so long? Little Taisui snorted. It wouldn't be surprising if a dilly-dallying coward died in the Tower of Punishment. When little Taisui recalled how this man had repeatedly paced back and forth in front of the doors, it couldn't help but say, "Damn sissy." Everyone. Did Dao Wuji look like a sissy? Little Taisui, on the other hand, was as pretty as a little girl with red lips and white teeth. Dao Wuji looked like a tough guy, but little Taisui kept calling him a damn sissy. That was really shocking. He doesn't look like a sissy, he's just a sissy. Little Taisui explained, he's indecisive and sissy. He didn't like this guy at all. Yuan Shichen smiled. Little Taisui, you're quite good at judging people. Little Taisui's face darkened. He turned around and said angrily to Yuan Shichen, "Don't talk to me like I'm a kid. You have to respect me." Everyone was silent for a moment, selectively ignoring his words. As they spoke, they entered the 17th floor. As soon as they entered, they discovered that their surroundings were plunged into darkness. Or rather, it wasn't just the surroundings that were plunged into darkness. Above their heads, below their feet, and in front of their eyes, everything was a dazzling starry sky. The stars were like little diamonds embedded in the night sky, dazzling and gorgeous. Mo Lien was slightly taken aback. She felt as if she were standing on a star, and all she could see was a vast expanse of starry sky. It was boundless, and she couldn't see the end of it. What was the meaning of this layer? Such a vast and boundless starry sky was displayed in front of him. What was he supposed to explore? Prince Mo was at a loss for a moment. He stared blankly at the boundless starry sky and slowly walked forward. He only felt that the stars in front of him were twinkling and changing unpredictably. For a moment, they were arranged into a picture, but in the next second, they changed into another shape. In the depths of the sea of stars, he seemed to be able to see a slender figure running ahead while waving her small hands and her skirt fluttering in the wind. With a flash of his body, he chased after him. However, that figure was so vague that it was like a bubble that was embedded in the sea of stars. There was no way he could catch up to it. He had no choice but to run forward. The more he chased her, the more he felt that she was getting further and further away from him. The shadow in the depths of the sea of stars seemed to be forever out of reach. Inexplicably, he became irritated in his heart. At the same time, in a small room on the 16th floor, a certain someone, who was being hung upside down on the flower branch as nourishment, was shouting at the top of his lungs, "Hey! Is there anyone here? Guards! Please stop fooling around, okay?" Chapter 1754. He felt that if this went on, his life force would be gradually absorbed by the morning glory. Soon, he would end up like the people around him. His life force would be sucked dry by the morning glory. How could this happen? He, Dao Wuji, was not someone who would sit around and wait for death. In order to survive, he might have to give it his all. He used his divine sense, and an item suddenly jumped out of his inner world. This was the celestial prime Saint Power Pearl that he used to save his life. He had bought it at a sky-high price. Every time he thought about it, he felt his heart ache. Unfortunately, he had already spent all his money. No matter how much he felt, it was useless. Moreover, if this money could save his life, it would be worth it. However, when the Saint Power Pearl exploded, it would not distinguish between friend and foe. In his current situation, he could not escape. If he threw the Saint Power Pearl, it would inevitably affect him. However, he no longer had a choice. He had reached the point where he had to risk his life. The winner would live, and the loser would die. Dao Wuji's heart skipped a beat. He raised his hand with difficulty and poured all the saint power he could gather into this high-level Saint Power Pearl. Soon, a loud explosion came from this small room. However, Mo Lien and the others could not hear it. They were now trapped in the starry sky and could not help but run into the depths of the starry sky. The section break of Zi Yunxi's house. 20 days later. In Qian Luo's underground arena, there were roars that were comparable to wild beasts. The battle for points had reached its climax. The first place on the crystal screen was Team Nyobi. This team had not met any opponents along the way. They had participated in the challenge tournament earlier and had obtained some points. Hence, Team Nyobi, who was in first place, had accumulated 906 points. As for Team Lychee from Arbor's family, they had accumulated 898 points and were in second place. Among these 898 points, there were 720 points from Arbor's victory in the challenge tournament. Arbor had fought a total of 38 matches in 20 days since he started participating in the challenge tournament, breaking the record of the previous challenge tournament. Arbor had been in the ring since the first day of the match and had never left the ring. As for Team Longan, because they did not participate in the main tournament, even if they worked hard every day, they only had 306 points and had not entered the top 50. A bunch of pitiful kids. They had to fight more than a dozen matches every day. They were dog-tired every day, and their points were so low. Arbor saw that they were quite pitiful, so he looked for Mata and said, "If we have 1,000 points, we'll give some to you." Mata immediately burst into tears, his face full of joy. They even asked the waitress at the service area about this. When the two ladies learned that Team Lychee from Arbor was going to give some points to Team Longan, they looked at them as if they were fools. It was as if the people from Arbor had done something stupid. Everyone knew how hard it was to earn points in the underground arena. There were actually people who wanted to give away their points. If they were not fools, then what were they? Arbor naturally did not give Mata and the others his points. He only asked them if they could do so and then went back with them. Mata, Huatao, and the others had been worried about their points. Now that they saw a glimmer of hope, they were very grateful to Miss Chiao. She was their lifesaver. Chapter 1755. The little girl had done them a huge favor. They didn't want to stay in this arena after a month of hard work and earn points to go home. Who knew what kind of punishment the instructors would give if they didn't complete this mission? Arbor's small arena matches were very easy now. Apart from the fierce challengers in the first few days, no one dared to challenge her in the arena these 2 days. There was no other reason. When Miss Chiao was in a good mood, she would practice with others for fun. If she was in a bad mood and happened to meet someone she didn't like, she would take out a spirit artifact and drop it for fun. Everyone had carefully calculated for her. A conservative estimate was that Miss Chiao had dropped at least 10 spirit artifacts. Every day, Steward Tang of the arena would send people to reinforce the defensive layer of the small arena to prevent innocent people from getting hurt. That what else could you say to such a rich person? You couldn't afford to offend her, so you could at least avoid her. Arbor had just sat down in her seat when a person hurried over and bowed to her respectfully. Miss Chiao. Steward Zhu. Arbor nodded. The middle-aged man named Steward Zhu was the chief steward of the Zhu family, one of the 3 aristocratic families in Anka City. Miss Chiao, the patriarch, sent this lowly one to ask if you have time to visit the Zhu family for a follow-up examination after today's matches. Arbor looked at the matches in the arena. The day's matches were almost over, so she nodded and said, "Sure, please wait a moment." Yes. Steward Zhu was overjoyed. He cupped his hands and quickly retreated to the side, tactfully not disturbing Arbor. Speaking of which, the only son of the Zhu family's patriarch was saved by the little girl before him. Speaking of this, the story went back to 20 days ago. Yu Batian had set his eyes on the bloodshed vermilion fruit of the Zhu family. After failing to cheat him of it, he found people to intercept the patriarch and take it by force. The little girl happened to bump into him on the way and saved him in passing. After hearing that the Zhu family's patriarch had a holy medicine but didn't know how to use it, everything happened naturally. Now, everyone in the Zhu family regarded Arbor as their great benefactor who gave them a new lease on life. This was not only because he had saved the Zhu family's patriarch, but also because he had cured the Zhu family's only heir, the illness that young Master Zhu had when he was still in the womb. Although it was a saint-grade spirit fruit with superb effects, if it wasn't for the little girl, no one in the Zhu family would use this bloodshed vermilion fruit. Even if it was forcefully given to young Master Zhu, it might not be effective. But in fact, the Zhu family was too honest. The little girl didn't just conveniently save Patriarch Zhu. It was only because Qiu had coincidentally seen Patriarch Zhu being chased by someone that he had cheered. That person has the aura of the bloodshed vermilion fruit on him. She chased after him to help and, conveniently, saved him. After she obtained the vermilion fruit, the little stoic excused that the bloodshed vermilion fruit wasn't properly maintained and needed to be nurtured for 2 more days before it could be used. Very naturally, he transplanted this holy herb into his own herb garden on Paradise Planet. To help young Master Zhu improve his physique, there was no need to use the bloodshed vermilion fruit at all. It was simply overkill. The outer pulp of this bloodshed vermilion fruit could improve one's physique and prolong one's life. The biggest use of the core inside was to help people comprehend their spirit roots. Normal people probably didn't know about this point. She had only learned about it from Long Chuyun's personal notes. Seeing that the Zhu family had contributed a bloodshed vermilion fruit, the little stoic was very concerned about young Master Zhu's fetus illness. Chapter 1756. Not only did he use sacred water to recuperate his body, he even racked his brains to specially concoct the most suitable pulse-healing pill for him. He even reluctantly gave young Master Zhu 3 taels of spiritual tea and asked someone to brew it for him to recuperate his body and bones. In this way, 20 days later, young Master Zhu had been recuperated to the point where he was lively and energetic. Compared to his usual sickly appearance, he was much better. Although young Master Zhu was still unable to practice martial arts, his body was slowly recuperating. As long as this continued, he would definitely be able to practice martial arts after 3 years. In the past, when his body was weak, even with Xian meridians, he could only sigh at his inadequacy and was unable to accumulate Xian energy. But after recuperating his body, it was different. He could practice whenever he wanted, and slowly, his body would become stronger and stronger. Zhu Su took in a deep breath. When Arbor walked in, he saw young Master Zhu leaning against the window with only a thin outer robe draped over his body. "Come here." Under Miss Qiao's shout, young Master Zhu obediently climbed down from the window and ran to her side. The 2 servant girls who followed and looked down, and although the corners of their mouths were secretly twitching, they were already used to it. Thinking back to when Miss Qiao first came to treat young Master, she even rolled up her sleeves and gave young Master Zhu a beating. This. What did you want everyone to say? Their young master originally didn't have any will to live, but it was beaten back by this violent Miss Qiao. Cough. Although family head Zhu's heart ached when he saw his son being beaten up, he didn't expect the results to be so good after the beating. Family head Zhu had nothing to say. "Jojo, what did you bring for me today?" Young Master Zhu was about the same age as Arbor and was born with a baby face. Now that his complexion was getting better, his little face was rosy and it added some cuteness to a young man. When Arbor first met him, young Master Zhu was leaning against the window lifelessly, looking at the lake and feeling remorse. He didn't have the slightest bit of manliness. After taking his pulse and giving him a prescription, he responded weakly with just a breath more than a dead person. What kind of explosive temper did Miss Qiao have? This great aunt had personally come to treat you for the sake of that stock of sacred medicine, and you still dare to give her the cold shoulder? One look and you know that face is asking for a beating. Fight! After a round of beating, Zhu Gongzi sobbed and became much more obedient. This naturally weak young master had always been well protected by the Zhu family head since he was a child. When had he ever seen such a violent doctor? When I passed by a mask stall today, I saw 2 very interesting masks, so I bought them. Do you want them? Yes, yes, yes. Young Master Zhu did not step out of the house all year round, so he was curious about everything that happened outside. Not to mention a mask, even if you gave him a piece of dog poop, he would hold it in his hand and admire it for a long time. After Arbor finished treating him, he glanced at a certain someone who was playing with the mask with her head lowered. He snorted and said, "Let's go." "Hey, Jojo, don't go yet." Young Master Zhu hurriedly said, "Tomorrow night is the annual Chrysanthemum Festival. Why don't you take me out for a stroll?" Arbor turned his head and looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. Young Master Zhu couldn't help but blush. He coughed lightly and said, "That, if you didn't speak up, my father definitely wouldn't have let me out." He had stayed in the house for so many years that he felt like he was going to rot. Chapter 1757. Not to mention anything else, even ordinary people walking around outside had become an extravagant hope for him. How could this not make him depressed and discouraged? Arbor patted his head. "Your body is getting better day by day, it's not a problem for you to go out for some fresh air." "Really?" Zhu Gongzi's baby face immediately lit up. "I'll introduce a few friends to you while I'm at it." Sure. Zhu Gongzi was overjoyed. He had been ill for so many years, not to mention friends, even relatives rarely visited him. "The condition is that you have to take your medicine well tonight and rest early." Yes, I will." Zhu Gongzi nodded his head like a chick pecking at rice. His obedient appearance made the 2 servant girls beside him cover their mouths and secretly laugh. Arbor rather liked this simple youth in front of her. In the past, when she saw his lifeless appearance, she only felt very displeased. There was no other reason. A youth like him should be living under the sun, all right. Why was he pretending to be melancholic for no reason? She hated it just looking at him. Alright, I still have matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. Arbor packed her things and walked out the door. I'll come and pick you up tomorrow evening. Alright. Zhu Gongzi waved his hand and sent her off with an expectant gaze. When Arbor was at the main entrance, she coincidentally bumped into Zhu Family Head, who had hurried back. Zhu Family Head looked a bit travel-worn. He must have taken care of a pile of matters and rushed over because he was concerned about his son's condition when he heard that she was in the residence. Zhu Bin hurried forward to greet her, "Little divine doctor." Arbor waved her hand. She was never a divine doctor. Her medical skills were only slightly better than ordinary people's. Your son's body has been nursed back to health quite well. He just needs to keep it up. I changed the prescription for him today. The medicine is mainly gentle and nourishing. After taking it well for 3 months, he should be able to recover. In the future, he just needs to consolidate a little. Zhu Family Head was overjoyed and thanked her profusely. Arbor continued, "Tomorrow is a rare chrysanthemum birthday. I want to bring Zhu Gongzi out for some fresh air. This will also help his condition. Now that young Master Zhu's body is starting to get better, it is necessary for him to take a stroll." Zhu Family Head stared blankly for a moment before nodding his head repeatedly in agreement. Then, he personally sent Miss Qiao out of the door. Watching Miss Qiao get into the carriage and leave, Zhu Family Head smiled. "Congratulations, Patriarch. Young Master's illness is getting better and better. In a few more days, he might be able to cultivate." Manager Zhu also said with a face full of joy. Patriarch Zhu nodded. "Fortunately, I met the little miracle doctor." Fortunately, the Patriarch trusts this little miracle doctor. If it was someone else, seeing that the little girl was so young, they might not even let her treat the young master's illness. Now that Su-er's illness has been cured, I can finally rest easy. Patriarch Zhu said with relief, "When I go to the underworld and see Su-er's mother, I will finally have the face to meet her." The Patriarch is in the prime of his life. In the future, he will have to watch the young master get married and have children. If Madame knew about this, she would definitely be smiling in the underworld. Patriarch Zhu nodded. His expression suddenly turned serious. Anka City hasn't been peaceful recently. Tomorrow, when the little miracle doctor and Su-er go out, you must send more people to protect them. Yes, Patriarch. Manager Zhu cupped his hands in salute and naturally agreed. Chapter 1758. The next day, Arbor lazily said to everyone after they finished their matches, "Tonight, there's a chrysanthemum festival in the city. I plan to bring young Master Zhu there for a stroll. Those who want to come along can come." Ma Ta was the first to raise his hand. "I was just about to tell you. I also heard from others that this chrysanthemum festival is very lively. There's even free chrysanthemum wine along the streets to taste." "Oh. Then we should go and take a look." Lu Yu, Jiang Shaoxin, and Hua Tao all nodded. For so long, everyone had been cooped up in the underground arena to compete every day. They were almost petrified from all the fighting. It was rare for them to go out and relax. Only fools wouldn't go. "Qiao Qiao, Zhu family's young master, is he the one that you often go to treat these days?" Qiao Qiao's glorious deed of saving Zhu family's head had long been spread in the city. Basically, everyone knew that Family Head Yu wanted to snatch a sacred medicine from Family Head Zhu. He didn't hesitate to chase after Family Head Zhu and was saved by a little godly doctor in the end. "Yes, it's that young Master Zhu," Arbor said indifferently. Qi Xianxian smiled happily. "That's great. I heard that young Master Zhu is sick all day. He should come out more often. Tonight's chrysanthemum festival, let's drink to our heart's content and not go home until we're drunk." Duanmu glanced at her coolly and said in a low voice, don't we have to compete early in the morning tomorrow? This was simply like a basin of cold water that instantly extinguished Qi Xuanxuan's enthusiasm. Little Fatty smiled and said, we can still drink a few cups. As for not going home until we're drunk, forget it. After all, they still had to compete tomorrow. However, in these 20 days of competition, each of them had improved a lot. They had benefited a lot from actual combat. Coupled with the spirit tea that Arbor had given them, all of them except for Arbor had advanced a small step. Jiang Shaoxin had entered the level 1 mastery realm, Lu Yu had advanced to the level 2 initial mastery realm, and Hua Tao had entered the level 2 entry mastery realm. As for the little fatty, his improvement was the greatest. He broke through the threshold of the spirit realm from the peak of level 15 mystic cultivator realm and ascended to the entry level of level 1 spiritual cultivator realm in one leap. Qi Xianxian, Duan Muqing, and Ma Ta had also improved. They had respectively risen to the initial success stage of level 14 mystic cultivator, the entry stage of level 4 spiritual cultivator, and the peak stage of level 1 spiritual cultivator. Compared to everyone who had more or less taken a small step, Xiao Mu's situation appeared a bit strange. She clearly felt that the barrier to the spirit realm was within her reach, very very close. But no matter what, he couldn't seem to pass the threshold, and was always blocked in front of the door of the spirit realm. Thinking of this, Arbor couldn't help but shake his head, temporarily throwing this question to the back of his mind. When it was almost 10 o'clock in the evening, the group of people boarded 2 separate carriages and arrived at the Zhu family's gate. They picked up young Master Zhu and took him to the busiest street in Wuxia City. At the same time, Yu Batian, who was raging in his room, received an uninvited guest. This customer's appearance was very mediocre. At first glance, he looked no different from an ordinary person on the street. However, his eyes were extremely thin and long, and his voice sounded a bit like a eunuch's. Family head, you, not only did you not obtain the holy medicine, but you also attracted trouble for no reason. Do you want to let this matter rest? Who are you? Chapter 1759. Yu Batian wasn't a fool. He wanted to compete with family head Zhu for the position of the head of the aristocratic families in Wuxia City, but he wouldn't allow his family to be in danger. Who are you? Yu Batian asked in a low voice. Just call me Brother Go. The feminine voice let out a shrill laugh. Yu Batian furrowed his brows. This person was able to sneak into his master bedroom without anyone noticing. It was obvious that the Yu family's guards were useless against him. His cultivation was naturally much higher than anyone in the Yu family. Yu Batian didn't want to make an enemy out of this mysterious person, at least not now. Judging from the Zhu family's attitude, they were definitely planning to start a war with them. Family head, you didn't want to provoke a mysterious enemy in front of a strong enemy. Therefore, he relaxed his expression and put on a respectful attitude as he called out, Brother Go. Brother Go, why are you visiting so late at night? A small brocade box suddenly fell into family head Yu's hand. Send the best person in your family to challenge the arena champion tomorrow. Yu Batian couldn't help but smile bitterly. I'm afraid it'll be difficult. The current champion was a rich man through and through. She probably dropped more than 10 spiritual artifacts in the past 20 days. Brother Go smiled eerily. What do you think is in the box I gave you? It's an elixir that can instantly increase a person's strength by 3 times. What? You only need to send a disciple who's a spiritual master. Imagine if a level 4 spiritual master's strength is increased by 3 times. What will happen? Yu Batian's breathing quickened. Brother Go, do you have a grudge against the young arena champion? Brother Go didn't even bat an eyelid. He just said calmly, that's not something you need to worry about. In short, you are responsible for killing this person for me. Okay. Yu Batian was very happy. He couldn't wait to kill this little miracle doctor girl. That way, without the miracle doctor's treatment, the Zhu family's only son's condition would worsen. As long as the sickly Zhu family continued to fall, family head Zhu would naturally have to take care of him. The Yu family would definitely take over the Zhu family sooner or later. However, my lord, my eldest son has been delayed by some matters and hasn't been able to return to the clan yet. It will probably take another 5 or 6 days. Could you give me a few more days? Brother Go furrowed his brows. Are you sure you can make it in time for the main competition to end? I'm sure. Yu Batian nodded with a smile. The arena battle tournament will end in 8 days. My eldest son, Yu Hui, will definitely make it back. It would be better to let that little champion continue to be happy for a few more days until the competition was almost over. Let my son chase that girl who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth down the stage. The feeling of falling from the clouds to the mud must be wonderful. Ha ha ha. The high-pitched voice laughed. Brother Guzzi nodded and said, "You're right. I'll leave this matter to you." Yes. Yu Batian licked his lips excitedly. Yu Batian couldn't help but laugh out loud when he thought about how sullen he had been for the past few days and how he would be able to relax after a few days. Xiao, how many more days do you think you can be the champion of the arena? For the sake of smoothness, I'll give your son something that will guarantee his victory. Come with me. Chapter 1760. Arbor naturally didn't know that Yu Batian and an unknown person were plotting against her behind her back. Even if she knew, she would probably scoff at them. Did they really think that the spirit medicine that could increase cultivation by 3 times was so easy to take? It might feel good for a while, but would they still want to live after taking it? The human body had a tolerance for spirit power. Otherwise, why was it said that one shouldn't take risks when advancing? Once this tolerance was exceeded, the human body wouldn't be able to withstand it and would easily explode and die. Arbor didn't know that family head Yu had been instigated to deal with her. At this moment, she was leading young Master Zhu, Qi Xianxian, and the others slowly on the bustling streets of Anka City. Today, pots of chrysanthemums were placed on both sides of the streets of Anka City, but few people actually took out chrysanthemum wine and invited people to taste it. However, it made sense. In this day and age, wine was a luxury item. This year's chrysanthemum festival was purely for appreciating the flowers. There's no wine. Ma Ta looked disappointed. He wanted to taste the chrysanthemum wine of Anka City and see if it was any different from the ones he had eaten before. Arbor glanced at him in amusement. You want to drink? Jojo has wine. There's good bamboo leaf wine and homemade winter fruit wine. Which one do you want to drink? Winter fruit wine. Everyone said in unison. Then let's go. Arbor pointed at a flower rack made of potted chrysanthemum plants in front of them. A few tables and chairs were placed there for the tourists to rest their feet. When the group walked over, they saw that many people were sitting at the tables and chairs in front of the flower rack. Some people were holding cups and shaking their heads as they commented on the chrysanthemum wine and recited poems. There were also some people sitting around a table, holding a bamboo tablet and racking their brains for something. What are they doing? Mata curiously went over to take a look. After a while, he squeezed out of the crowd and smiled at Arbor and the others. There's a small amount of chrysanthemum wine here, but you have to guess at least 3 riddles on the bamboo tablet. Are you going to guess? Qi Xianxian and the others looked at him curiously. Mata quickly shook his head. Don't we have winter fruit wine? Why do you have to fight for the chrysanthemum wine? Qi Xianxian sneered, actually, you're just not smart enough to guess it. As he spoke, he saw Duanmu Qin walk out from the crowd with a small wine jar in his hand. Everyone's eyes lit up as they looked at him. Duanmu, how many puzzles have you guessed correctly? Upper limit. Everyone was speechless. What's the upper limit? 12 questions. Is everything correct? Qi Xianxian asked curiously as she blinked her eyes. Okay. Everyone sat down at a square table and surrounded it. Then, they pulled out a stool from the side and sat down. Each of them took out a small cup from their inner world and accepted the cup of wine that Duan Wuqing poured for them. They took a sip and smacked their lips. It's too faint. It looks like it has been diluted with water. Mata put down the cup with a disappointed expression. Everyone else put down their cups after tasting a mouthful. What's so good about diluted wine? Arbor took out a jade wine gourd from his inner world. Try my winter fruit wine. Everyone made the same gesture, wanting to pour away the wine in their cups and accept Arbor's winter fruit wine. Who knew that an old man in ragged clothes would jump out from the side, holding a large bowl with a chipped corner? He smiled at them and said, Don't waste it. Little friends, if you don't want to drink, give it to me. Chapter 1761. The old man opened his mouth and smiled, revealing a row of shiny teeth. Arbor saw that the old man had a red nose and was dressed in tattered clothes. Although he looked like a beggar, his spirit and appearance were very good. She couldn't help but find it funny. She nodded and signaled everyone to pour the chrysanthemum wine into the old man's bowl. The old man was beaming with joy. He grinned foolishly at her for a while before holding the big bowl and squatting at the side to drink. Everyone shook their heads helplessly and turned to look at Arbor. Arbor opened the jade gourd and a strong fragrance of fruit wine floated out of the gourd. The old man who was squatting at the side and drinking the wine like it was water suddenly twitched his nose. He got up from the ground and turned to look in Arbor's direction. There were many elderly people sitting in front of the flower stand. When they smelled the wine, they all turned to look at Arbor. Wow! Qi Xianxian and the others couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Jojo, you still have such good wine hidden away. You've really hidden it well. Arbor couldn't help but feel helpless. Actually, this winter fruit wine was made by Little Tree when he was bored. Naturally, she didn't have the leisure to do so. The reason was that there were too many winter fruits. Even though she had already given Prince Emo a lot of winter fruits, there were still many left in the storage. Little Tree thought that they were taking up space and it was a pity to throw them away, so he took all of them to make wine. Come, let's drink. Mata laughed and raised his cup to everyone. The 9 cups clinked lightly and a mouthful of winter fruit wine went down their stomachs. They only felt that it was sweet and pleasant. The fruit wine in their stomachs emitted a trace of heat. This taste is too good. Qi Xianxian couldn't help but praise. Even someone like her who didn't drink often felt that this fruit wine was very good. There was a trace of sweetness but it wasn't too sweet. After drinking it, she felt that her muscles and veins were very smooth. It was really good stuff. The old beggar at the side was already drooling. He scratched his ears and cheeks as he stood beside Arbor's table with a strange expression. Little girl, is this wine really brewed from the winter fruit? The old man with rosacea asked curiously. It was not like he had never tasted winter fruit wine before, but how could it taste so strong? It's winter fruit wine. Arbor nodded with certainty. But these winter fruits had been soaked in holy water for a while. At that time, Arbor originally wanted to make chilled winter fruit, but it was soaked there for a long time without being touched. When she remembered, the impatient sapling had already disposed of it. So, what could she say? The old man with rosacea ran to Arbor's side and chuckled, "Little girl, can you give this old man a sip of your wine?" Arbor saw his bright eyes staring straight at the jade gourd in her hand. When he spoke, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. It was obvious that he was an alcoholic. "Okay, I'll share with you." Arbor nodded reluctantly. "Since you're an old man." Everyone. Arbor held the wine gourd and poured wine for the old man. The old man watched from the side and urged, "More, more." Little girl, don't be stingy. Your wine gourd clearly contains dozens of barrels of wine. Giving this old man a big bowl won't be a loss. Arbor's eyes flashed. She poured half a bowl and stopped. Tell me who you are, and I'll fill it up for you. There were so many people present, but no one noticed anything strange about her jade gourd. Why did this old man have better eyesight than others? Chapter 1762. No one would believe him if he said he wasn't a hermit expert. The old man pursed his lips and gave Arbor a sidelong glance. How can a little doll like you talk like that? I'm just an ordinary old beggar. Arbor naturally didn't believe him and snorted softly. Seeing her withdrawing her hand and about to take back the jade gourd, the old man instantly panicked and made a fuss. Hey, what exactly do you want to know, little doll? Tell me. Do you dare to say that you didn't purposely approach me for some purpose? Arbor asked indifferently. The old man immediately put on an innocent look and chuckled. What purpose could this old man have? This old man smelled the wine, and the alcohol bug in my stomach flared up, so I ran over to ask a little doll like you for a cup of wine. The old beggar did his best to put on a, please look at my sincere old face, look. Oh, is that so? Arbor couldn't help but scoff. Stop pretending. With your eyesight, you can tell that my jade gourd is different from the rest at a glance, and you still dare to say that you're not an expert. The old man hastily waved his hand and said, No, it's you who's thinking too much, little doll. After saying that, the old man simply dragged a stool from the side and squeezed his way to Arbor's side to sit down. He said with a grin, Forget it, seeing that you rewarded this old man with a mouthful of wine, this old man will give you something good. So that a little doll like you won't always think that this old man is a swindler. Arbor was a bit amused inwardly, but she didn't show it on her face. No matter how the old man looked at her little stoic face, he couldn't make out any clues. The old man couldn't help but feel a bit exasperated and dissatisfied with her attitude. He pressed, Don't tell me you're not the least bit curious. Shouldn't such a young little girl immediately reveal an interested expression and ask what he was going to give her when she heard someone say that he was going to give her a gift? Why didn't this little fellow in front of him follow the routine at all? A certain Jojo who didn't fall for the old man's trick blinked and asked along with the old man's words, Then what do you want to give me, old grandpa? The old man's face instantly lit up with joy, and he slapped his thigh and said with a smile, Aya, that's right. Little girl, don't pretend to be old all day. Arbor's mouth twitched, but she didn't argue. How about this, you give me 2 full bowls, and I'll let you see that good thing. Hearing this, Mata couldn't help but laugh. You old man, don't tell me you're here to cheat us of our wine. Young man, don't talk nonsense. Am I that kind of person? The Jojo's, Jojo, juice, jot, stss, tease, s. TTTTSS, have 8 s to T. Arbor tilted her little head. Old grandpa, other than wine, I also have side dishes to go with it. Do you want some? The old man's eyes lit up when he heard that. Come. You little child, you're so mean. You only thought of side dishes after watching this old man drink for so long. Everyone. This old man was a natural socializer. He didn't feel the least bit embarrassed about extorting a little girl like this. Arbor waved her hand and took out a plate of spicy yellow croakers. She held it in her arms and said, Old grandpa, what good stuff do you have? Chapter 1763. The corners of the old man's mouth twitched. You stingy girl, you really don't act unless you see an incentive. Here, don't say that this old man cheated you of your food and wine. This is for you. Then, he reached into his robes and took out a round transparent ball. He threw it in front of the little fellow and was done with it. The little fellow raised her hand and took a look at the transparent ball, only to see that there was still half a wall of water rippling inside. A unique, richly ornamented three-story boat, which looked like a model, was drifting with the waves inside. Her small hand shook the transparent ball. Arbor could clearly sense that this was not some condensed mystic domain similar to the heart of paradise. Thus, she could not let her little tree take it in and make it into a new planet. So, what was the use of it? She turned to look at the little old man and pursed her lips. "Old Grandpa, what is this?" "Ah, it looks quite unique." Qi Xianxian and young Master Zhu both leaned over and took the small ball. They held it in their hands and admired it. Arbor, however, did not think much of it. What was the use of giving a small model that could only be admired and played with? "You really don't know what's good for you." The old man blew his beard and glared at her. Then, he pointed at Duan Muqing. "Explain it to this little girl." He looked like he was busy drinking and eating and could not be bothered to speak to Arbor. Duan Muqing turned to look at Arbor and said softly, "Jojo, quickly thank this senior." The old man waved his hand and used his chopsticks to pick up the small yellow croaker. "There's no need to thank me. Why don't you bring 2 more dishes to this old man? I was right to say that you were stingy. You were only willing to give me 1 dish. Why aren't you stingy to death?" Xiao Mu blinked her large, black eyes. She took the transparent ball that little young Sir Zhu handed over and shook it vigorously. "What is it?" "This is a sealing ball. It can seal large objects inside. When the time comes, the outer seal can be broken and the object inside can be taken." "Sealing ball? Never heard of it." Arbor raised his hand to touch the sphere and asked curiously, "You mean, there's a real 3-story ship sealed in this sphere?" Duan Muqing nodded and looked at the old man with some confusion. This old man was dressed in rags and had a wretched appearance. Who would have thought that once he made a move, he would amaze the world with a single brilliant feat? This priceless sealing ball was very rare. It was also very rare in the Divine Continent, let alone in the Shantian Prefecture. "Grandpa, what benefits do you want?" Arbor turned around and asked the old man. He was slightly wary. "I don't have anything valuable to exchange with you." "Bah!" The old man couldn't help but want to spit on this child's face. How could he not know the extent of this little fellow's wealth? That was someone who could casually drop a spirit tool, yet here he was complaining about being poor in front of this old man. Arbor raised his hand and touched his little face that wasn't spat on. He squeezed towards Qi Xianxian with a look of disdain. "Why are you spitting on me? Don't deny it when I say that you're stingy." The old man blew his beard and glared. "This old man may be poor, but I won't go so far as to cheat a child like you. This thing is for you to play with. You don't have to spend money to exchange for it." "Oh." Arbor was indifferent. He reached out and kept the sealing ball back into his inner world. The old man was immediately angered to the point of laughter. Look, this little girl did it on purpose." Chapter 1764. This stinky lass was clearly waiting for him to finish his sentence so that she could naturally and calmly keep the item away. "Old Grandpa, do you want another bowl?" Arbor asked in a small voice. "Bah! Even if he drank himself to death, he wouldn't be able to drink it back." The old man glared at her in annoyance and then placed the empty bowl in front of her. "Do you still need to ask? Fill it up." Everyone couldn't help but laugh. This ship is called Red Firmament Blue Waves. Not to mention the ordinary rivers, lakes, and seas, you can even go to the lower star field and the upper 3 continents. The old man snorted. Arbor's eyes lit up when she heard that. "Go in the water, swim in the fire. Can you go up to the sky? I already told you that you're called Qi Shao." The old man angrily reached out his hand and smacked her little head. "Then if you give this ship to me, how are you going to go back, old grandpa?" Arbor raised her hand to cover her head and asked curiously. It's none of your business. I have my own way of going back. The old man suddenly came back to his senses and couldn't help but laugh. You little doll, you've learned how to trick me, haven't you? His answer was obviously admitting that he was from the divine continent. Humph, this old man doesn't care about you anymore. The old man, who was in a bad mood after being tricked, angrily took out a wooden wine gourd from his chest. Fill it up. Arbor glanced at his gourd and pursed her lips. Even if I pour the entire gourd out for you, it might not be able to fill it up. Darn brat, you're really not easy to trick. That's right, this gourd of his was also a treasure. He originally wanted to trick the little girl, but who would have thought that she would see right through him? How infuriating. The old man said angrily, then I'll pour half of it. Arbor looked at the old child helplessly and nodded. She slapped her hand and a stream of wine instantly shot out from the jade gourd. It formed a winding curve and accurately entered the black wooden gourd in the old man's hand. The old man nodded and said, Little doll, your technique is not bad. Quick, give me more. You stingy doll, how is this half? It's not even a third full. The old man noisily asked Arbor to give him half a gourd of winter fruit wine before he clicked his tongue in satisfaction. He reached out and finished the remaining wine in the bowl. Then, he put the bowl into his bosom and waved his hand. He stood up and said, There's no need to send me off. Everyone was speechless as they watched the old man leave. However, after taking 2 steps, he turned back and took the half-plate of small yellow croakers from the table into his arms. Only then did he wave his hand and leave in satisfaction. Qi Xianxian could not help but laugh. This strange old man is really strange. I can't see through this old man's cultivation, Duanmu said calmly. I'm afraid he's a God-state expert. Little Fatty could not help being stunned when he heard that. He did not expect that old man was actually a deity realm expert. One had to know that in the 6 prefectures continent, deity realm experts were extremely rare. If a clan had a deity realm expert overseeing it, then it could be considered a medium-sized clan. Young Master Zhu nodded and said, That's right. The old man is so skilled in martial arts, yet he disguised himself as a ragged beggar and walked around our Shantian continent. He must be a hidden expert. Arbor could not help but secretly twitch the corner of her mouth. She did not know why, but she felt that the old man's ragged clothes could not be so high and mighty. Perhaps it was because he was poor. Chapter 1765. After the old man hugged his wine gourd and walked out of the flower rack, he looked down at his tattered clothes and couldn't help but slap his old hand hard. You won't be able to swallow your pride. If he had asked for spirit coins from that damned child just now, wouldn't he have been able to get rid of his tattered clothes? Angrily, he found a doorstep and sat down. Then, he took out a communication jade talisman from his pocket and wrote on it, Third brother, are you blind? The crown prince's wife is stingy. How could he be an interesting person? Don't you know how stingy she is? Thinking of that expressionless face, the old man couldn't help but feel his teeth ache. In the future, if he were to bring this master back, it would be very lively. The emperor's cold face against his daughter-in-law's expressionless face, cough cough, who knows who would win. Arbor's group drank 2 more cups of winter fruit wine under the flower rack. During this time, a few old men boldly came forward to ask for more, and Arbor gave it all to them. Thus, the other old men sitting under the flower rack also came forward to try half a cup of winter fruit wine. Fortunately, Arbor's small jade gourd actually contained dozens of barrels of wine. Even if she gave half to the old man with rosacea, the winter fruit wine inside was enough for thousands of people to drink. There were only a dozen old men present, so it didn't matter. I really didn't expect that we would meet an old man giving Jojo a gift while we were strolling on the street. Mata couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He had heard of the red Nimbus Blue Wave ship before, but he couldn't recall it at first. This ship could truly travel between the 6 prefectures of the lower star field and the 3 prefectures of the upper star field. As expected, good-looking people would eat and drink well wherever they went. Otherwise, how could you explain why a beggar would give Jojo a gift? Arbor didn't think much of it. Although she didn't know what the old man's motive was, she didn't need to guess to know one thing. The old man gave this ship to her in hopes that she would bring Prince Mo back to the Divine Prefecture. However, why did they have to obediently return when someone else summoned them? What kind of joke was this? He would still accept the gift. As for whether he would return it or not, that would depend on his mood. She wouldn't leave the 6 prefectures continent until she dealt with the Clear Sky sect and found Fan Gu and Fan Chioha. It was unknown which rat hole Fan Chioha was hiding in, or whether he had become moldy or stinky. Arbor coldly closed his eyes and calmly put away the wine gourd. Let's go. It's getting late. I need to get a good night's sleep. I still have to play tomorrow morning. Young Master Zhu, on the other hand, seemed rather excited. The fruit wine was mild, and Arbor allowed him to drink half a cup. At this moment, Master Zhu's baby face was very red, and his complexion looked very good. Jojo, how about I come to the underground arena to watch your match tomorrow? Young Master Zhu pleaded. It's not safe in the city recently. If you go out alone, your father will be worried. Arbor said faintly. Even a fool could see that the 3 noble families in Wenka City were fighting each other. Young Master Zhu's safety would be compromised if he went out recklessly. Zhu Su hurriedly said, I'll bring more people with me. Arbor frowned slightly. You drank half a cup of wine today. You might have a headache tomorrow. Why don't you rest for a few days before going out? Young Master Zhu immediately wilted. Arbor ignored him. She stood up with the others and walked to the carriage parked at the corner of the long street. Chapter 1766. Before they reached the carriage, Arbor's eyes suddenly narrowed. Her footsteps suddenly stopped, and the people around her also stopped with strange expressions on their faces. Suddenly, a group of hooligans with machetes appeared from the corner. The machetes in their hands were brandished at the crowd. However, how could these ordinary hooligans be a match for Arbor and the rest? Qi Xianxian and the rest kicked away the hooligans who got close. However, because there were too many hooligans in the fight, Arbor and the rest were subconsciously separated by a certain distance. Duanmu Qing's expression was cold. He raised his hand and a few thorns drilled out from the ground, directly binding a few men who rushed forward to catch them. In just a few exchanges, several local ruffians and hooligans were hung high on the thorns of the wood brambles, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws while howling. Duanmu Qing acted as though he didn't hear the hooligan screams and took care of a few more before turning to look at Arbor, who was handling the crowd with ease. Arbor's moves were very decisive and powerful. Basically, those hooligans were completely taken care of by her fist before they could even get close to her. Arbor didn't give any face to these people who suddenly rushed out with bad intentions. She also didn't think that she was too heavy-handed. Since they dared to run out to make trouble for her, Xiao Mu, after accepting money, then they were probably prepared to die. The leader of the hooligans had a fierce look on his face. Seeing that he couldn't get anything out of Arbor and the rest, he hurriedly whistled, "Go." They were just the vanguard team who came to stir up trouble. When the time came, they just had to retreat. However, dreams were beautiful, but reality was extremely cruel. Arbor waved her slender hand and threw the unconscious body of a hooligan onto the leader of the hooligans. The hooligan cried out in pain and took a few steps back. "Stop them," Arbor said calmly. At the same time, a little white squirrel jumped down from her shoulder and scurried back and forth in the crowd. Everyone who was bitten by the little squirrel howled and fell to the ground. Only then did the group of hooligans know fear. They realized that the people in front of them were not people they could provoke. "Go, go, go, go." Seeing that the reinforcements still hadn't arrived, the local ruffian couldn't help but panic. He had received a large sum of money and brought his men here to stop Arbor's group. To put it bluntly, he had no idea why they had set this up. Seeing that they were going to die in Arbor's hands if this went on, the local ruffian couldn't help but panic. He hurriedly shouted, "Everyone, please stop. Listen to me first." Qi Xianxian couldn't help but laugh. "Oh, you're here to look for trouble but you can't win. Now you know how to beg for mercy. It's useless to shout and beg for mercy." Mata rolled his eyes and said loudly, "You bunch of little bastards, leave your lives here. You dare to cause trouble in front of your grandpa Mata? You deserve to end up like this." Bang! In the midst of the chaos, a loud bang came from where the carriage was parked at the corner of the street. It was as if the entire carriage had been blown up by something. Xiao Mu and the others were taken aback, and they hastily walked over. When they saw that their carriage had been blown to smithereens. Chapter 1767. Arbor couldn't help but be enraged. What kind of joke was this? She was the one who hired the carriage. Now that these people blew up her carriage, wouldn't she have to dig out spirit coins to pay for the carriage's repair fees? At the thought of this, Arbor couldn't help but gnash his teeth in anger. Qi Xianxian also stomped her feet and wailed, "Fuck! Which bastard dared to blow up your family's great-aunt's carriage? Come out." Arbor reached out and lightly tugged at little young Master Zhu's sleeve. "Don't run around and don't leave my side easily, okay?" Zhu Su wasn't a fool. Although his experience in the pugilistic world was very shallow, he was someone who loved reading and paid attention to thinking. Therefore, he was at most inexperienced in the world, but his brain was still relatively smart. From the looks of it, they seemed to be coming for him. Jojo and the rest were probably implicated by him. At this thought, little young Master Zhu couldn't help but feel a bit gloomy. "Jojo, I feel that this group of people is most likely coming for me. I'm sorry, I've made everyone unhappy." Seeing little young Master Zhu's gloomy appearance, Qi Xianxian couldn't help but chuckle. "What does this have to do with you? It's completely because these people don't have eyes and want to bump into our blades." Mata even laughed out loud. "It's fine. Let me tell you. I was still fretting that there wouldn't be anyone for me to practice with after I advanced. Although these people's martial arts skills are mediocre, it's still better than nothing." His aggrieved tone made it seem like this group of local ruffians and hooligans were completely a bunch of trash that simply couldn't take a few punches from him. At this time, another group of people came out from behind the exploded carriage. They were completely different from this group of small fries with meager martial arts skills. These people who jumped out to besiege them were basically all level 14 mystic cultivators and above. There were a total of 30 people who came. They surrounded Arbor and the rest in the middle while the outer layer was a grandiose group of local ruffians. At a glance, the situation seemed to be very unfavorable for Arbor and the rest. In fact, in the eyes of Arbor and the others, the latter group was also very weak. Take the little fatty for example. He could send 2 people flying with a single punch, so one could imagine how much of an overstatement the cultivation of these newly emerged level 14 mystic cultivators was. The advancement of one's cultivation base was divided into 2 categories: cultivation through hard work and rapid advancement through medicine. For trash like them who relied solely on medicine, when they met an opponent of the same level, they would be killed in an instant. After Arbor dealt with the people around him, he tugged on young Master Zhu's sleeve and took a few steps forward. She only saw a black shadow, like a great rock spreading its wings, fly in front of her with a whoosh. Raising his hand, he grabbed young Master Zhu who was beside her without any explanation. How could Arbor allow anyone to lay a finger on young Master Zhu? With a fierce kick, he took the opportunity to push Master Zhu behind him. Without hesitation, a row of silver needles flew out. They were divided into 3 parts, the upper part, the middle part, and the lower part. They went straight for the man's eyes, chest, and lower abdomen. These 3 ruthless rows of needles came rather quickly. The man was startled and hastily retreated backward with swift reflexes. Following that, he dodged and hovered in the air for 2 laps. When he steadied himself, he looked back. He saw that several local ruffians and hooligans didn't escape and became his scapegoats. At this time, these local ruffians all had silver needles stuck in their chests. They were foaming at the mouth and had their eyes tightly shut. It was obvious that they had already fainted. Chapter 1768. It didn't look like a lethal poison, but it was indeed vicious to be able to cause a person to faint in an instant. Who knew if these local ruffians and hooligans could wake up again? That person clearly didn't expect Arbor's reaction to be so fast. After failing to grab him, he immediately drew a flexible sword from his waist and charged behind Arbor in the direction of little young Master Zhu. How could Arbor let him touch Zhu Su? His gaze sharpened, and a stream of water coiled around his palm and abruptly struck the man's sword-wielding wrist. As a result, that man's flexible sword abruptly shifted to the side, and he also dodged to the side. A powerful spiritual energy seeped out of the flexible sword tip and pounced toward Arbor and little young Master Zhu from a distance, abruptly creating a spiritual energy vortex. Arbor promptly made a decision and set up a defensive barrier in front of him, blocking all of the man's attacks. A shooting star powder was mercilessly flung over. With a series of clanking sounds, the man used his flexible sword to hastily deflect that shooting star powder, but more than half of the local ruffians and hooligans around him were caught in the crossfire. This group of local ruffians and hooligans fell to the ground and wailed as they rolled around under the shooting star powder. Qi Xianxian and the others didn't care about their lives and either stepped on them or kicked them away to prevent them from blocking the way. They didn't take them seriously at all. This caused the group of people to wail and cry for their parents. All of them rolled around on the ground, hating that their parents didn't give them an extra pair of hands so that they could quickly crawl away from this bloody battle. Little Fatty's group of 7 started fighting with the group of level 14 and above mystic cultivators. Although the other party had the advantage in numbers, their combat strength wasn't too strong, so they were relatively easy to deal with. As for Arbor, he only needed to protect that little young Master Zhu. When the mystic cultivators who arrived later saw that they couldn't take down a few young men and women despite having so many people on their side, they couldn't help but feel anxious, and their attacks also intensified. Someone roared, "Berserk Tiger," and a ferocious tiger suddenly jumped out from behind him. Qi Xianxian glanced at it and couldn't help but sneer. "Where's the mystic beast you summoned?" As soon as he finished speaking, the golden lion roared and jumped out majestically. Without any explanation, it slapped the tiger summoned by the man and sent it flying. Wah! That level 14 mystic cultivator spat out a mouthful of blood and looked at Qi Xianxian in horror. To be able to kill his own Xian beast with a single slap, how powerful must it be? If it weren't for the fact that his beast was on the verge of death, he wouldn't have suffered such a severe backlash. The golden-haired lion seemed to have entered a no-man's land, sweeping away all the little ruffians in front of it with one paw. The person who was fighting Arbor saw that the situation was not good, so he hurriedly gave a look to his disciples. He stretched out his leg and kicked a few of the ruffians' buttocks, making them fly in front of Arbor, while he quickly retreated. Arbor coldly swept a glance over and tossed little young Master Zhu to Qi Xianxian and the others to protect. She had already shot out and leaped onto the snow leopard's back in a few steps, patting its head. The snow leopard quickly chased after him and madly dashed around the streets with the man for a while before stopping in front of a vermilion gate. The gate was tightly shut, and there was a mighty stone lion squatting on each side of the gate. A vermilion plaque hung in the middle with the words, "U Estate," written on it. Arbor's cold gaze landed on the U Estate's tightly shut gate, and an ebony talisman automatically floated into her hand. Chapter 1769. With a light flick of her finger, the ebony talisman quickly disappeared into the air. Xiao Mu expressionlessly raised her hand, and several hundred normal talisman papers rose from her fingertips in the blink of an eye. They flew up in an orderly fashion and floated above the Yu estate in a single file, imperceptibly constructing a large-scale talisman matrix. This large talisman formation was made up of 324 ordinary yellow talismans. Once the talisman formation was formed, unless the people of the Yu residence broke the formation from the inside, they would be locked inside and unable to find a way out. This was a maze array, and it was one that Arbor had personally researched and improved. If she used a large maze array and threw out 648 yellow talismans, she could lock down the entire street where the Yu residence was located. When Qi Xianxian and the others arrived, they saw Arbor sitting in front of the Yu residence with a stool. Her stoic face was expressionless. Jojo. Qi Xianxian hurried over, followed by the pale-faced young Master Zhu. Arbor raised her head and glanced at him. She softly reprimanded, "Useless. You're so scared that your face turned white over such a small matter." Although she was reprimanding him, she shot out several beams of white light with a flick of her finger. Silver needles entered his acupoints, and Zhu Su's complexion improved slightly. Arbor retrieved the silver needles from the air and tossed him a small medicine bottle. "Take it." Young Master Zhu stuttered as he took the medicine bottle and took a calming pill. Only then did he feel the panic in his heart subside slightly. He had been well protected by his father since he was young. He had never seen such a chaotic situation of being hunted down. He didn't expect to hit the jackpot on his first trip out. Little Fatty looked at young Master Zhu sympathetically. Although his family background was not as good as young Master Zhu's, his body was strong. He was not like young Master Zhu, who panted after running a few steps and his heart pounded wildly. When your body fully recovers, cultivate properly. Little Fatty patted young Master Zhu's shoulder and said with a smile, "Your body is too weak." The youth blushed slightly and hurriedly nodded. "Jojo, why are we blocking the entrance of the Yu residence?" Qi Xianxian looked curiously at Arbor and asked. "Compensation." Arbor said indifferently. He didn't feel at all that it was ridiculous for him to block the entrance of the Yu residence and ask for compensation. The people from the Yu residence had smashed her carriage into smithereens. Shouldn't this debt be settled with them? Did they really think that Arbor was a pushover? She wasn't a fool. She had to compensate, and she had to compensate 10 times the amount. Otherwise, any cat or dog would be able to bully her and casually take away her ride, wouldn't it? Looking at the completely serious expression on that stoic little face, everyone silently suppressed their laughter and put on a solemn expression as they nodded in unison. "That's right. Compensation should be made. Their family head is called Yubatian, right?" Mata said with a smile. "Should we call inside?" Arbor nodded. "Yes. Tell Yubatian to pay 1,000,000 spirit coins as compensation for the loss of the carriage." Everyone was speechless. "You're asking for such an exorbitant price. Does your conscience not hurt?" "All right." Mata cleared his throat and immediately shouted at the Yu family, "Family head Yu, we are the ones who were chased by your family's disciples just now. We've already sealed off the Yu residence. Don't try in vain to escape with your own abilities. That's impossible. Obediently hand over 1,000,000 spirit coins as a fine, and this debt will be temporarily written off." Chapter 1770. At this time, Yubatian, who was in the inner chamber of the Yu residence, received the news from his disciple and hurried out to look at the sky. Above the house, a dark and gloomy vortex had replaced the originally bright sky. When everyone looked up, they could no longer see the blue sky and white clouds. All they could see were small vortexes. "Patriarch, something bad has happened." Among the Yu family elders who had heard the news, an old man walked out and said with a frightened expression, someone has set up a talisman formation above our residence. What? A talisman formation? Patriarch Yu asked with a puzzled expression, who would act so rashly against our family? At this time, Mata's loud shout reached the ears of everyone in the Yu family. Everyone, including Ubatian, heard Mata's shout as long as they weren't deaf. Ubatian trembled with anger. These people are really bold. They actually dared to ask for 1,000,000 spirit coins. Did they really think that he, Ubatian, was a fool? Not to mention 1,000,000 spirit coins, Ubatian didn't even plan to pay half a spirit coin. Go, gather all the Yu family disciples. Later, follow this old man to the main gate. He didn't believe that a mere talisman formation could stop so many people in the Yu family from going out at the same time. Ubatian waved his hand in high spirits, instructing the elders to gather all the disciples and gather at the main gate. The elder who had spoken earlier took a step forward with a face full of worry. He raised his head to look at the sky formed by the vortex and helplessly said, "Patriarch, there are many times when you and I have never heard of or seen the methods of a symbol master. We don't know what level of talisman master the other party is. If it's a high-level great talisman master, I feel that our family really might not be able to get out of this talisman formation this time." Ubatian couldn't help but be furious. "Elder son, why do you always boost the morale of others and diminish our own? I don't believe that such a small talisman formation can be used. There are so many people in the Yu family. Can't we just fight our way out? We're locked up in the residence. Are we just going to sit here and do nothing?" The elder sighed, "Patriarch, it's better to be cautious. Since the other party came in such a menacing manner and demanded that we hand over 11,000,000 spirit coins, we won't be allowed to leave the house if we don't. That means that the other party has made thorough preparations beforehand. Even if we force our way out, we might suffer heavy losses." Ubatian glanced at the elder. "Scared? Just stay at home and don't go out." After saying this, he flicked his sleeves and left. The elders looked at each other, and one of them couldn't help but ask, "Elder son, what do you think of this matter?" Elder son shook his head and sighed as he looked at Patriarch Yu's obstinate back. Then, he followed behind Patriarch Yu with several other elders. Soon, more than 300 young disciples of the Yu family were summoned to Patriarch Yu's side. Family head Yu looked at the disciples and said with righteous indignation, "Everyone, you should have heard what the person outside the door said. As a member of the Yu family, I, like all of you, abhor this. We absolutely won't bow our heads to the evil forces outside. Our Yu family can be beheaded and shed blood, but we will never abandon our belief in fighting for the glory of our family." Chapter 1771. The group of family head, roared a few times. Their faces were filled with emotion. It was as if the people outside were in front of them right now, the Yu family disciples would immediately tear them apart. Family head Yu stretched out his hands and gently pressed down, stopping everyone's roars. Then, he sneered and said, "Among the young disciples of my Yu family, you are the most outstanding. Now, I will lead you out of this talisman array. Is everyone confident?" "Yes." Everyone repeated several times, making family head Yu very satisfied. Thus, he led the group of disciples valiantly and energetically to the gate. Family head Yu felt that his understanding of the Yu family's gate was quite high. Not to mention walking the path from the Yu family's gate to the inner court 8 times a day, it was sometimes possible to walk it more than 10 times. But today was so strange. No matter where he went, he would still return to the place where he had gathered everyone. After repeated trips like this, even an idiot would know that there was a problem with the path in this house. A disciple couldn't help but ask weakly, "Family head, is there a problem? Can we really get out by ourselves? There seemed to be a problem with this gate, right? It seemed that they could go anywhere. For example, the courtyard of the house, the back garden, and so on. There was no problem walking there. The main problem was that the gate seemed to be blocked. No matter how they walked, they couldn't reach the gate. The more the disciples walked, the less confident they became. Although they didn't say it out loud, they couldn't help but mutter in their hearts. "Family head," you said with a cold face, "don't worry. With me leading you out, you will find the way no matter what." They went back and forth like this countless times. Family head you and the others didn't know that they seemed to have lost the concept of time. They were like headless flies, wandering around the U family. At this time, it was already late at night. Arbor's group naturally wouldn't foolishly stand outside someone's gate and wait for them to surrender. The group sent young Master Zhu back to his residence and returned to their inn as if nothing had happened. They had a good night's sleep and continued to play the competition the next day. The unlucky family head you had brought more than 300 U family disciples to wander back and forth in his own home. It wasn't until the 300 disciples were lying on the ground like dogs and couldn't move that Patriarch Yu realized that he couldn't even distinguish between day and night in this talisman array. The main reason was that the sky was blocked by the vortex, making it impossible to see the original sky. Arbor's group waited until they finished a day's worth of matches before leisurely arriving at Yu Manor's entrance. Mata chuckled, then he turned to the Yu family and said, "Patriarch Yu, have you considered it? If you pay 2 million spirit coins today, you can set your whole family free." Everyone in the Yu family fell silent for a moment. Suddenly, Yu Baishan's angry roar could be heard throughout the entire street. "Shameless rascal! Don't even think about getting a single spirit coin from my Yu clan." Oh! Mata wasn't disappointed. He just curled his lips and continued to shout, "Since that's the case, Master Yu, let's part ways here. We'll come to see you again tomorrow." Patriarch Yu was so angry that his eyes rolled back and he almost fainted. "Who asked you to come back tomorrow?" Mata and Patriarch Yu's voices weren't low. Not only could the entire street hear them, but almost half of the pedestrians and peddlers on the street could hear them as well. Chapter 1772. For 3 days in a row, Arbor brought a group of wicked friends to the Yu family and shouted at them every time. "Family Master Yu. 4 million spirit coins can't buy you a trick. 4 million spirit coins can't buy you regret. If you don't agree today, the price will increase tomorrow." The passers-by couldn't help but twitch their mouths when they heard this. "Fuck, when don't you raise the price? You make it sound like the price is going to increase on the first day." Actually, these masters came to the Yu family's door every day to shout, and the price increased by 1 million spirit coins a day. Family Master Yu was probably hiding at home, crying and not daring to see anyone. His courtyard was sealed with talismans, and a day ago, he used a message talisman to inform the best talisman master in Anka City to come and help. In the end, the talisman told him bluntly, "Sorry, the maze above your house is made of 328 yellow talismans, and it's extremely difficult to crack. Unless the talisman master who cast the talismans removed it himself, it would take him at least 49 days to crack it." As a result, Family Head Yu was done for 0.49 days to break the talismans and let them out. Wouldn't it be too late if he waited too long? Moreover, the talisman master who had some friendship with him also told him clearly that the talisman master who cast the talismans above his house was of a higher level than him. How could Family Master Yu endure this? The biggest problem Family Master Yu was facing now was that he couldn't swallow his pride and admit defeat. After all, he had been stubborn for nearly 4 days. The Yu family was locked up at home and didn't know whether it was day or night. How could he predict that they would be locked up at home for 4 days? It was actually very simple. According to the talisman master who cast the talismans, he would increase the price by 1 million spirit coins every day, so this was the 4th night that although Family Master Yu was very angry, he couldn't do anything to the talisman master whom he had never met. If he wanted to kill someone, he had to at least get out of this maze first. Mata, who was shouting outside, curled his lips after a while and said, "It seems that we really don't have a chance today." "All right then, family master you, take care of yourself. We'll come to see you tomorrow. Oh, by the way, remember to count the spirit coins. The passers-by. Could this brat be any more shameless? Those who didn't know would have thought that it was some filial son shouting outside the door. Who would have thought that it was family head Yu's group of debt collectors? Alright, Jojo, I don't think master you will fork out any money today. Let's go back first. Arbor nodded. Just as he was about to turn and leave, he heard an angry roar from the Yu family's direction. Cheaper. Arbor couldn't help but be furious. He shot Mata a look. Mata immediately roared back at Patriarch Yu, Bah. You made us stand here like idiots and shout at you for 4 consecutive nights. Cheap my ass. The buyout was 5 million. If we're a minute late, we'll have to raise the price again. Little Fatty's mouth twitched, and he secretly gave Mata a awesome hand gesture. Patriarch Yu was about to go mad with anger. He couldn't help but roar, if you have the guts, remove this talisman array and have a fair fight with me. Bah! Who wants to fight with you? 5 million, we'll remove the array after you pay. Ubadian was angry and resentful. He sat at a stone table and forcefully massaged his chest to soothe his anger. Suddenly, a spirit coin card floated in front of Arbor and the others. The little guy stretched out his finger and caught it. Chapter 1773. What is this? Miss Chiao expressed that she didn't like this little card. I want spirit coins. The kind that can be counted piece by piece. Everyone. They didn't know what this lady liked. She was obviously a tycoon, but she liked to hold her purse and count her money when no one was around. This is a spirit coin card that can be used in the 6 prefectures continent. Duanmu Qin coughed lightly and said, it can be exchanged at any bank. It can also be used in normal shops and auction houses, so there shouldn't be a problem. Arbor immediately expressed her displeasure, it's so light. Everyone was speechless. The little lady was complaining that this card was too light. Of course, it wasn't as heavy as counting spirit coins piece by piece, but wasn't it more convenient for trade? Let's go. Arbor put away the 5 million spirit coin card and said worriedly, let's find a shop and swipe it. Don't skimp on it. Duanmu Qin was speechless. Everyone followed her to the corner of the street. Little Fatty couldn't help but scratch his head, I feel like we've missed something. Qi Xianxian suddenly thought of something and exclaimed, Jojo, we took the Yu clan's money, but we haven't dispelled their array yet. Arbor nodded indifferently. Her expression clearly told them that she had noticed it long ago. Is this okay? Qi Xianxian stammered. She was an honest child. When Jojo said that he would give her the money and she would give him the goods, she felt that he was honest and reliable. But now that the other party had already paid, they abandoned him and ran away. This didn't seem right. Arbor said indifferently, the talisman energy in this array can last for 5 days at most. The array will disappear tomorrow morning. So that she didn't need to waste any effort. She didn't need to do anything at all. Actually, even if family head you didn't give the 5 million spirit coins today, the array would disappear tomorrow morning. So, family head you gave the money. It was a huge loss. Everyone couldn't help but complain in their hearts. Poor family head you. Of all people to offend, he had to offend such a jinxed, my Joe division line. In the underground arena, Arbor was sitting in the spectator seats, his eyes fixed on the arena. At present, Xiao Mu's team Lychee had already obtained 1,540 points, and they were firmly in first place in the championship. On the other hand, the Ox Bull team, which was originally in first place, had a total of 102 points. The bitter team Longan worked very hard every day to play the competition. Now, they had accumulated 508 points and were barely ranked 54th. For the past 2 days, no one had challenged Arbor. Arbor had nothing to do, so he led Mata and the others to the service counter and distributed the 500 points to Team Lychee. Thus, everyone suddenly realized that Team Longan, who was originally ranked behind, had suddenly rushed to the second place at an extremely strange speed. With a total of 1,008 points, they instantly overwhelmed the Ox Bull team. When Arbor, Mata, and the others returned to the arena, they heard a clamor in the arena. There was actually a person standing in the center of the arena with his hands clasped behind his back. A few staff members in front of the crystal screen were shouting at her. "Lady Qiao, the arena champion with 63 consecutive wins, please come up to the arena. Yu family's disciple Yu Hui wants to challenge the arena champion." Chapter 1774. Yu Hui's expression was indifferent as he looked up at the sky and stood on the small arena with his hands behind his back. That was definitely the style of an expert, and he looked very imposing. Qi Xianxian and the others were stunned. As Arbor had won 63 matches in a row and frequently self-destructed her spirit tools, her methods had reached a level that made people's hair stand on end. Thus, very few people dared to provoke her. After all, it was not a wise choice to challenge this rich girl. Rather than asking for humiliation, it was better to fight a few more matches to earn more points. As the competition neared its end, more and more people secretly regretted not being able to buy Miss Qiao to be the champion. It was obvious that Miss Qiao had an 80% to 90% chance of becoming the champion. There were only 2 days left until the end of the competition. If someone went up to challenge the champion now, even if they won the challenge, the champion would still get 80% of the points. As for the champion's points, they would have to be recalculated. This meant that even if Yu Hui won against Miss Qiao today, he would not be able to win against Team Lychee in points in the next 2 days. Team Lychee was the champion team that almost everyone thought was the champion team. Qi Xianxian glanced at the man on the small arena. "Yu Hui. Is he from the Yu family?" Manager Tang hurriedly nodded and said, "Yu Hui is the eldest son of the Yu family. He is currently a level 3 spirit master and has a super spirit beast that is close to a divine beast by his side. Yu Hui's abilities are not to be underestimated. Miss Qiao, please be careful." Arbor nodded. She knew that Manager Tang was trying to curry favor with her. Since he was from the Yu family, she would teach him a lesson so that he would not cause trouble for her from time to time. Arbor's eyes flickered. Her body flew like a swallow and quickly flew towards the arena. The staff members in front of the crystal screen heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Miss Qiao's figure. There was a time limit to this competition. If Yu Hui was standing on the arena and Miss Qiao did not enter the arena within 15 minutes, she would forfeit the competition. Then, Yu Hui would automatically become the champion. Yu Hui stood with his hands behind his back and his back facing Arbor. His chin was raised high. From the beginning to the end, his gaze never left the altar. He was always looking at the sky. Arbor didn't care. Anyway, in her eyes, Yu Hui was just an idiot with a bad brain. Tell me, which serious challenger wouldn't be cautious and secretly observe their opponent? This idiot, on the other hand, had his eyes fixed on the sky the moment he stepped onto the stage. It was as if a cow had flown across the sky. The few staff members in front of the screen were obviously shocked by Yu Hui's attitude. They looked at each other and thought to themselves, is this person sick in the head? One of the staff members coughed lightly and said, the competition can start now. Thunderous cheers immediately erupted from the field. In fact, in every arena hegemony tournament, the main arena was the most intense and exciting. But this year's main tournament was just too ridiculous. This nouveau riche arena master was a very bad person. He would only spar with others when he was in a good mood. Most of the time, the problem was solved with a single spirit weapon. According to incomplete statistics, Some professionals announced how many spirit weapons the local arena champion had squandered in this underground arena championship. Not more, not less, a total of 51 spirit weapons. In other words, more than half of her 63 consecutive victories were due to the self-destruction of spirit weapons. Chapter 1775. Of course, the nouveau riche champion didn't feel like she was being cheated at all. Wasn't the self-destruction of spirit artifacts a part of her strength? Rich. It was also a part of her strength, all right. The giant ape had thrown so many spirit artifacts to her. What else could they be used for? She didn't understand why every time she took out a spirit artifact to explode, everyone would stare at her strangely, as if she didn't know what kind of crazy thing she had done. It was simply inexplicable. Arbor's body flashed, and she was already standing in the center of the small arena. At this moment, a match in the lower arena had just ended. After the winner and loser were decided, both sides walked off the stage exhausted with injuries. For a moment, there were no more teams in the large arena. It was as if the staff had deliberately arranged for the ordinary matches to be delayed so that everyone's attention would be focused on the individual match between Arbor and Yu Hui. However, the people in the arena were somewhat disapproving. They were already familiar with Miss Chiao's routine. Look, didn't this little fellow take out a spirit artifact from her inner world? At this moment, Yu Hui finally glanced at Arbor. When he saw the spirit artifact in her hand, he couldn't help but sneer and snort. Do you think I'm one of those trash who went on stage in the past? You think a spirit artifact can make me step down? You're dreaming. Arbor's small hand flashed, and several more spirit artifacts appeared in her hand. Everyone looked at her speechlessly. The matches these days had really broadened their horizons. From this, they knew that there was indeed a sky beyond a sky, a man beyond a man, and a nouveau riche above a nouveau riche. Yu Hui's expression changed, but he only calmly set up a defensive barrier around him. A pair of sharp eyes stared fixedly at Arbor and said coldly, "Don't waste your energy. I've already said that I'm not one of those trash from before." Boom! A violent shock woke up some of the sleepy spectators in the back row. Everyone was shocked, and they secretly cursed in their hearts. Some were so agitated that they jumped up and tried to calm their hearts. They thought that this explosion would definitely turn young Master Yu into ashes, but who knew? Taking a closer look, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. Young Master Yu was protected in the arms of a spirit beast that looked like a pangolin, completely shielding him from the whirlpool caused by the explosion. This spirit pangolin used its back to block the power of the four spirit tools' self-detonation. The remnant spiritual energy was completely blocked by it, and young Master Yu, who was in his arms, was not harmed at all. As expected, it was a super spiritual beast that was infinitely close to a divine beast. Its defensive ability was not something that other small spirit beasts could compare to. The crowd burst into an uproar in an instant. Someone laughed wildly, "Amazing! Amazing! This little girl is going to kick an iron plate. Only when one's own strength is strong enough, that is true strength. It's useless to rely on some fancy tricks. Isn't that so?" The explosive power of the four spirit artifacts was blocked by the pangolin. Ha 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 ha. This is simply awesome. Young Master Yu is mighty. Let's kill this little girl and see if she can still be so arrogant. The person who cursed felt pain in his mouth as soon as he finished speaking. He reached out and touched his hand, which was full of blood. He was so frightened that he lost his head and screamed. Ah! My mouth. That person fell to the ground in pain and rolled around at the feet of others. Chapter 1776. You deserve it. Qi Xianxian coldly glanced at the man. He actually dared to curse her Jojo. He deserved to have his teeth knocked out and his mouth crooked. Duanmu Qingyi calmly retracted his hand, not showing any signs of attacking. Although the man's companion was surprised, he couldn't figure out what was going on. After looking around for a while, he could only see a dense mass of heads. He couldn't see who did it at all, so he could only give up. "Old Five, are you okay?" His companion helped the man up. He could not help but feel a chill in his heart. He saw that the man called Old Fifth's lips were pierced through by a bamboo stick. To pierce a person's mouth with a bamboo stick, one's cultivation level was shocking. The man hurriedly glanced at his surroundings again. He didn't dare to stay and watch the show any longer. He hurriedly supported his companion and quickly left the arena. The arena was so big that the two men's encounter did not attract much attention. Only those who were nearby glanced at him curiously. When they saw that the man's mouth was covered in blood, they couldn't help but jump in fright. The others who did not realize what had happened were still talking about it. "Did you guys realize? None of the members of Team Lychee have a mystical beast." "That's right." Of course, they realized that Team Lychee had never used mystical beasts when they fought. There was another team called Team Longan that was as strange as them. Just based on this point, they looked down on the rich girl. She had so many spiritual tools, but she did not use them on the right path. It was such a waste to use them one by one. If she used these spiritual tools to equip her teammates with mystical beasts, wouldn't she be able to increase the overall strength of her team? Therefore, it was not wrong to say that she was wasteful. When they saw that someone was able to suppress the girl, most of them were excited. After waiting for so long, they finally saw someone as powerful as young Master Yu. How could they not be happy? There were even some who took pleasure in the girl's misfortune. The girl is going to die now. Look at young Master Yu's pangolin. It's like a warrior wearing armor. Even if the girl explodes her spiritual tools, she won't be able to break through its defense. Ha ha ha. That's right. To put it bluntly, most of the people were somewhat unconvinced that a little girl had dominated the arena for so long. However, the little girl's spirit weapon's explosion was too powerful, so they had no choice but to admit defeat. Young Master Yu. Young Master Yu. It was unknown who started the shouting, but the crowd erupted into cheers of Young Master Yu. Yu Hui was very satisfied with this kind of arena effect. Although he hadn't won yet, it was obvious that everyone's attention in the arena was on Yu Hui. In fact, 90% of them were hoping that Yu Hui would win. Yu Hui smiled faintly. He raised his hand and pressed down gently. Young Master Yu, Young Master Yu, Young Master Yu. The shouts in the arena became more and more excited. Everyone wanted nothing more than to jump up and dance as they cheered for Young Master Yu. Xiao Mu expressionlessly swept them a glance. She did not understand what this bunch of clowns were up to. What's the point of using so many superficial things in a fight? Jojo. Today is the 29th day. Chapter 1777. Qi Xianxian was afraid that Arbor would forget such a special, good day, so she hurriedly shouted at the top of her lungs. The 29th day. Arbor really forgot about it. Wasn't today the 29th day of the underground arena tournament? What did the teacher's letter say? In the first 28 days of the tournament, they couldn't summon their own mystical beasts, right? Wasn't today a coincidence? The 29th day was here. Arbor was really sullen these days. She watched others summon all kinds of mystical beasts, but it was always 2 against 1. Today, she was going to let others have a taste of what it was like to fight 4 against 2. Mocking Team Lychee for not having a mystical beast, right? Humph, then let's let this you guys see if she has a mystical beast or not. Arbor stretched out her small hand and suddenly shouted, "Come out quickly, it's a group fight." Roar. The snow leopard was the first to jump out. It tore open its claws and smashed towards Yu Hui's head. Crack. The sharp claws immediately left a mark on the pangolin's back. The pangolin whimpered and curled up into a ball and rolled to the side. After a loud cry, the bloodfire phoenix spread its wings and swooped down from the sky. A line of fire immediately sprayed on the pangolin's head. Arbor couldn't help but jump up and down. Wrong hit. Hit him. What was the point of hitting a mystical beast? Even if it died, the owner would only suffer a small backlash. It was boring. Since they had already made a move, they naturally had to concentrate their firepower. At the very least, they had to beat this complacent young Master Yu unconscious. Everyone in the seating area couldn't help but rub their eyes. What was going on? It wasn't that the nouveau riche girl didn't have a mystical beast, but that she disdained to summon one. Look at this nouveau riche's equipment. The snow leopard was snow white and its fur was shiny. It was obvious that it was an extremely powerful mystical beast. Most of them couldn't even tell what level the snow leopard was. Not to mention the phoenix that swooped down. That was a fire phoenix, right? Everyone had only heard of it in legends and had never seen it with their own eyes. Now that they saw it, they couldn't help but feel a little absent-minded. The contrast was really too big. Earlier, they were still mocking the young lady, saying that she was about to be defeated by young Master Yu's pangolin. Who would have thought that within a few minutes, the little girl would immediately slap their faces in front of them? Everyone couldn't help but want to curse. What the hell were you doing in the beginning? In the first 20 days of the competition, why didn't he summon his beast every day? Messing around with the explosion of spirit artifacts was simply toying with them. Now that you've summoned these two beasts, who else would want to fight you? Fight my ass. In terms of battle prowess and Xian beasts, the difference between him and the little girl was like heaven and earth. Wasn't going up to the arena just asking for trouble? Wait a minute. Everyone stared blankly at the fat squirrel that had jumped down from the little girl's shoulder. The moment the fat squirrel landed, it transformed into a fat little mountain squirrel and nearly crushed the pangolin to death with its butt. Fortunately, Arbor roared at it, and the fat squirrel reluctantly retracted its paw that was about to slap the pangolin and ran over to Arbor's side. How were these two freaking beasts? Weren't these three beasts? Everyone stared at Miss Chiao in the small arena, dumbfounded. They only felt that Miss Chiao's nouveau riche level had once again been refreshed by herself today. Yu Hui was also taken aback by her actions. Chapter 1778. 15 minutes ago. Yu Batian walked into the arena with a man with slender eyes and a melancholy aura. Please, Yu Batian said respectfully. Yu Batian didn't expect Brother Go's strength to be infinitely close to a level 15 great spiritual master. The power of the palm he released at the Yu family was shocking. Yu Batian couldn't help but rejoice that he hadn't offended this person when they first met. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in such a predicament now. Brother Go lifted his robe and sat down calmly. Then, he scanned the surroundings. The crowd that was still clamoring suddenly felt as if their hearts were being squeezed. This was the suppressive aura of a superior. After all, Brother Go was someone who was about to break through to level 15 great spiritual master. His spiritual pressure wasn't something ordinary people could withstand. At that moment, Duan Muqing had also realized that there was an extraordinary expert nearby. Duan Muqing looked in that direction and whispered something into the little fatty's ears. The little fatty immediately raised his head and looked over. Then, he nodded and said in a low voice, "It's family head Yu." However, they didn't recognize the man with strong spiritual pressure beside Yu Batian. That person looked very ordinary, but he had an aura that couldn't be ignored. Especially when that pair of slender eyes swept over them. Duan Muqing felt that this person gave off a very uncomfortable feeling. Duan Muqing and Fatty whispered to each other. When Yu Batian's attention also turned to them, Duan Muqing and Fatty retracted their gazes and looked ahead. Humph. Yu Batian had already seen Duan Muqing and the others. With the Yu family's influence, it was naturally one of the top forces in Anka City. It was too easy for him to find out the background of Duan Muqing and the others. However, family head Yu still couldn't figure out why there was a great talisman master among this group of children. He still couldn't find out who this great talisman master was. He should be an elder of these people. If he acted rashly, he might anger this great talisman master. Therefore, Brother Go's method was the most suitable. If the little miracle doctor was injured or killed in a reasonable manner during the competition, it would save a lot of trouble. Yu Batian smiled coldly and retracted his gaze. He said to Brother Go in a low voice, "My son, Yu Hui, is about to break through to the 4th stage. Brother Go, don't worry. Today, we will definitely kill that woman on the arena. However, if that great talisman master causes trouble for our Yu clan in the future, don't worry. It was just a normal competition. If she died, she could only blame herself for not being skilled enough. Even if that great talisman master comes to trouble you, I still have a way to deal with him," Brother Go said indifferently as he stretched out his hand. Yes, thank you, Brother Go. Thank you." Patriarch Yu immediately swallowed his heart back into his stomach. With a calm expression, he looked at the arena with a slight smile. Once his son made a move, not to mention that the girl didn't even have a Xian beast. Even if there was, with her age and the fact that she came from the lower star field, it would already be pretty good for her to be able to form a contract with a level 15 profound beast. However, his son, Yu Hui, had a supreme spiritual beast that was infinitely close to a divine beast. It wasn't something that any Tom, Dick, or Harry could deal with. Before family head Yu could finish this thought, his mouth opened wide, and his eyes were filled with a trace of incredulity. Chapter 1779. This is what? In a few breaths' time, the little girl had suddenly summoned 3 powerful beasts. Even with Yu Baishan's eyesight, he couldn't tell what grade that chubby squirrel was. Almost everyone's attention was completely focused on the small arena. They saw the little girl standing at the side with her hands folded, expressionlessly watching the 3 beasts rush up to beat up Yu Hui. Yu Hui was unable to block more than 3 moves before he was sent flying by the little fat squirrel's 2 tails. Yu Hui wailed miserably as he flew out of the arena and landed heavily on the first level of the arena. Everyone was dumbstruck for a moment, as if their brains had short-circuited and couldn't connect. After a long while, they finally regained their senses. This Yu family's Yu Hui boasted that he was invincible, but in reality, he was chased off the stage by the little girl in less than a quarter of an hour. Everyone was speechless, and the entire arena let out a series of boos. Family head Yu was so angry that his old face turned green, red, and white. He never thought that his son would be beaten up and thrown out of the arena by the other party's 3 beasts before he could officially fight with anyone. Hui. Family head Yu suddenly stood up and shouted angrily. Yu Hui fell on the first level of the arena, his head almost dizzy from the fall. Most importantly, he still hadn't reacted until now. He actually lost just like that. He hadn't even displayed his abilities. He hadn't even taken the elixir that could raise his cultivation by 3 times. Impossible. It was impossible for him to lose. Yu Hui stumbled and crawled up from the ground. There was an additional claw mark on his forehead, and a trace of blood flowed down from it. The few staff members in front of the crystal screen also recovered from their shock and hurriedly announced, "Miss Chiao has won again. Let us congratulate Miss Chiao for obtaining 64 consecutive victories. She has once again refreshed our previous record for consecutive victories in the main arena." Before the staff member could finish speaking excitedly, he saw Yu Hui abruptly jump back onto the small stage. He stared fixedly at Xiao Mu with a pair of scarlet eyes. That staff member was stunned and hurriedly took a few steps forward and shouted, "Come down. You've already lost. You can't enter the arena again. In our battle arena, there is no rule of fighting again after losing. Yu Hui abruptly turned his head and sent a swift and fierce palm strike at the man. His spirit energy swept across the other party's body and swept him away in an instant, crashing heavily into the stone crystal screen behind him. Then, he rolled down and coughed out a few mouthfuls of blood. Then, he stopped moving. The other staff members hurriedly shouted anxiously and went forward to push the man's body. Their expressions changed as they went forward to check his breathing and cried out, "Dead?" The guards who were patrolling the arena hurriedly rushed forward, wanting to get onto the stage and pull down Yu Hui, who had suddenly gone crazy. Unexpectedly, Yu Hui suddenly took out a brocade box from his sleeve, opened the lid, and took out a crimson-red medicinal pill with a fishy smell. He threw it into his mouth, chewed it vigorously twice, and swallowed the pill with a fierce look in his eyes. "Taking drugs because you can't afford to lose." Arbor glanced at Yu Hui coldly and smirked. "I want you to die." Yu Hui was really about to explode from anger. He originally thought that dealing with this little girl was just a matter of snapping his fingers. He had the supreme spirit beast pangolin, and the other party didn't have any spirit beast at all. He was bound to lose. Who knew that from the day she stepped into the battle arena, she had been pretending? Chapter 1780. Arbor's eyes instantly turned cold. Since he had already said that he wanted her dead, how could she not repay his kindness? "Do you know what kind of pill I took?" Yu Hui looked at her with a cold smile. "A country bumpkin from the lower star field, like you wouldn't know. You've never seen it before." Arbor couldn't help but snort. She didn't want to waste her breath on him, but when she saw his arrogant expression, she couldn't help but mock him. "I think you're the one who doesn't know anything." Arbor glanced at him indifferently. More accurately, she glanced at the brocade box in his hand. "I don't even need to look at it. Just by smelling it, I know that it's nothing good." Arbor looked at him with pity. "What do you mean? You still don't understand?" Arbor's expression was indifferent as she stared at him coldly. "You took this pill, which means that you're about to die." "Impossible." Yu Hui was furious as he stared coldly at Arbor. He put on a fake smile. "Don't think that I'll let you live just because you said that. Arbor, do you dare to make a blood oath and fight me to the death?" Arbor's gaze was like 1,000-year-old ice that sank into the depths of a cold lake. It was so cold that there wasn't a trace of heat. "You don't have the right to challenge me to a battle to the death." When she said that, Yu Hui was stunned and pounced on her like a madman. "How dare you look down on me? Today, I'll let you know that I'm not that good." Slap. With the ferrule in her hand, Xiao Mu swept it across fiercely, smacking the pouncing Yu Hui's face with a smack. Feeling the pain, Yu Hui stumbled back a few steps. He lowered his head to look at himself in disbelief, as if he had never expected that he would still be hit by Miss Qiao's attack even though he had already taken the cultivation-increasing elixir. "Idiot!" Arbor sneered. "Your pill hasn't taken effect yet. But before that, you will die." Arbor's eyes sharpened, and a line of fire suddenly shot out from the ferrule, flying towards Yu Hui. Body securing talisman. Body securing talisman. Body securing talisman. Arbor's fingertips moved slightly, and a series of body-securing talismans flew out. They directly shook in front of Yu Hui, and talisman energy flowed out. Of course, one body-securing talisman wouldn't be able to stop Yu Hui, but what about 10? What about 100? It was indeed true that the body-securing talisman would lose its effect in front of someone of a higher level. However, actual combat experience showed that if 100 body-securing talismans were used at the same time, it would be enough to freeze someone several levels higher than Arbor for 10 breaths of time. In a battle between experts, not to mention 10 breaths of time, even 1 breath of time was enough. Yu Hui looked at Arbor in shock. Sitting at the table, Patriarch Yu's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Brother Go, who was sitting beside him, unconsciously raised his eyebrows and looked ahead with a deep gaze. What's going on? My first-hand information is wrong. Is this little girl the Grand Talisman Master who set up the talisman array at the Yu family's door? No. It shouldn't be possible. How could such a young girl become a more powerful talisman master than the Grand Talisman Master of Wenka City? Moreover, her talent and cultivation weren't bad either. How could a person have so much energy? Chapter 1781. Was he proficient in both cultivation and inscribing talismans? Even if she started drawing talismans when she was in her mother's womb, it was impossible for her to have such a high achievement in talisman drawing at such a young age. She was not a genius from a talisman family in the Divine Land, who had the protection and care of her family. This girl was just an inferior person from the lower star area who had only stayed in the Shuntian continent for less than a month. How could it be? How could it be? Go's eyes showed a trace of shock. Family head Yu turned his head and caught Go's gaze. He immediately said anxiously, Go, is this girl the great talisman master? Impossible. Go waved his hand coldly at family head Yu. Do you think a person who is so outstanding in martial arts can have such great achievements in talisman drawing? Then how could she have so many body-securing talismans? Go frowned. I don't know. You should investigate this girl's background. Maybe she's not just an ordinary girl from the lower star area. Those talismans might be gifts from her teachers or elders. Don't panic. Just watch. Let's see how many talismans she could throw out. Unless her elders were rich and gave her all the talismans they had drawn for decades. But how could that be possible? It was impossible to have such stupid elders who spoiled their juniors and let them squander the talismans they had painstakingly drawn. Go's face darkened. He raised his eyes and looked at the small arena again. At this time, Xiao Mu had already arrived in front of Yu Hui in a flash. She gazed at him apathetically and directly attacked without a word, her ferrule aiming straight for his neck. If this hit, Yu Hui's life would come to an end. However, at this critical moment, the pangolin desperately moved its body and pounced on its master. It protected Yu Hui's head. Arbor's ferrule was so fast that it couldn't be stopped. It directly hit the pangolin's back. The pangolin's skin and flesh were torn open, and its scales were all cracked. Arbor was startled. He held the ruler in his hand and hesitated. This was her first time encountering a spirit beast that was so loyal to its master. She had to admit that she was touched. Yu Hui wasn't a good person, but his super spirit beast was very honest and loyal. One had to know that animals had survival instincts in the face of life and death. Although the owner of the undead spirit beast would most likely die from the backlash, there were cases where the owner died and the spirit beast was saved. Therefore, this pangolin valued its master from the bottom of its heart and wanted to save his life. Cough, 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 what are you doing? Unexpectedly, Yu Hui didn't appreciate it at all. He suddenly threw the pangolin lying on his head away and scolded, useless thing. She even dared to lie on his head. Who did he think he was? He was its master. He actually dared to be so disrespectful to him. He was simply courting death. If he had known that this fellow was so useless, he wouldn't have contracted such a trash as his contracted beast. He couldn't find a more powerful spirit beast or even a divine beast to contract with. Yu Hui's fierce eyes fell on the pangolin. For a moment, there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. This pangolin had been seriously injured before, and now it was thrown away by Yu Hui. Chapter 1782. The pangolin had helped Yu Hui block the attacks of the Bloodfire Phoenix, the little fat squirrel, and the snow leopard many times before. Immediately afterwards, Xiao Mu's full-powered strike with her foot had split open his skin and flesh. Now that Yu Hui had tossed him outside without any force, he crashed heavily onto the ground with a heavy thud. He didn't even have the strength to get up after making a heavy thud. Arbor looked sideways and saw that the pangolin had fallen to the ground with its belly facing the sky. It couldn't roll over for a long time, and its eyes couldn't help but be angry. "You're worse than a beast." Arbor had used the body-securing talisman to freeze Yu Hui, and the strike of the ruler was completely done with true power. If it weren't for the pangolin risking its life to protect its master, Yu Hui would have died. However, what made people's jaws drop was that the pangolin's loyalty was exchanged for the master's indifference and angry words. "What right did you have to criticize your own contract beast when you almost lost your life? There was no point in living for such a person who didn't know how to repay kindness and had no morals." Arbor sneered and wiped the ruler with one hand. The cluster of flames instantly turned transparent and faintly showed signs of turning purple. "Ah!" Yu Hui suddenly roared, and the clothes on his upper body were instantly torn apart by a turbulent flow of spirit power. He seemed to have suddenly gone crazy, and he howled into the sky and laughed wildly. My cultivation has doubled, ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha." The wild and arrogant laughter clearly represented the pride in his heart at this time. After the pangolin risked its life to block, Yu Hui finally digested the spirit medicine he took before, and his cultivation instantly soared by several levels. Ha 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 ha. The feeling of watching one's own cultivation rise like riding a dragon to the heavens was simply too exhilarating. Yu Hui couldn't help but laugh out loud. He turned to look at Arbor and said with contempt, "Do you know what I'm feeling now? The feeling of approaching death." Arbor's indifferent words were like a basin of cold water that immediately extinguished Yu Hui's joy. "Bullshit!" Yu Hui cursed. "You don't know how good I am right now. Look, look! Ha 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 ha! I went from a 3rd-level spirit master to a 6th-level spirit master, and I'm a 9th-level spirit master, ha 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 ha. I'm about to break through to a 10th-level spirit master. Stupid girl, why aren't you kneeling and begging for mercy? Have you seen a normal person kneeling and begging for mercy from a dead person?" Arbor sneered, and his expression was ruthless and cold. "Do you think it's a good thing for your cultivation to rise?" Yu Hui frowned. Subconsciously, he didn't want to hear Arbor's words. However, he could not help but want to know what Xiao Mu wanted to say next. "What do you mean?" Xiao Mu was not interested in explaining so much to an idiot. The advancement of one's cultivation base was a gradual process. Those cultivators who used ordinary medicinal pills could not be compared to the cultivators who cultivated through hard work, let alone Yu Hui, who used a special elixir to rapidly increase his cultivation base. It looked like his cultivation had risen to the level of a 9th-level spirit master, but in reality, this was just a flash in the pan, like a person who painted a pie to satisfy his hunger. Did he really get the pie? Chapter 1783. Actually, it wasn't. In fact, Yu Hui's current body couldn't withstand the spirit power of a level 9 great spiritual master. The burning spirit power tore at his tendons and veins. Did he think that everything would be over after the effects of the medicine wore off? There were 2 possible outcomes for him after the effects of this powerful cultivation-enhancing medicine wore off. First, his veins would be damaged by the spirit power. If he didn't have the help of a skilled doctor, he would be crippled for the rest of his life. He wouldn't even be able to preserve his spirit veins. Second, if he couldn't control the spirit power in his body during the process of increasing his cultivation, it could cause his spirit power to go haywire and cause his body to explode. However, would Arbor tell him all of this? What a joke. Rather than wasting her breath on this random person, she might as well kill him first. "Arbor," Yu Hui asked sternly, "I want you to answer me immediately. What did you mean by what you said just now?" Whoosh! A purple flame rapidly crept over like a blooming violet orchid. It abruptly spread out from Xiao Mu's feet and swept toward Yu Hui. That purple color was too enchanting and beautiful. In an instant, it almost blinded everyone's eyes. Qi Xuanxuan's anxious heart relaxed a little. She clicked her tongue and said, Jojo always has good things. This ferrule doesn't look like a normal spirit weapon. From the looks of it, this ferrule seems to be a 15th grade spiritual weapon. However, Duanmu Qing glanced at it and said calmly, it should be able to continue forging and leveling up. The person who made it should be a divine weapon master. It looks like a growth-type spirit weapon. Qi Xianxian was slightly speechless. So powerful. Then I don't have to worry. Little Fatty patted his chest and smiled. Jojo has the help of a divine weapon and Fire Phoenix and the other two. She'll definitely win. Duanmu Qing nodded slightly. There was no doubt about Jojo's strength. He wasn't worried that she wouldn't be able to defeat Yu Hui, but he didn't know why his heart was in a mess. His eyelids were twitching as if something bad was about to happen. Seeing that Duanmu Qing was no longer speaking, everyone turned their attention to the small arena. On the small arena, the purple flames from Arbor's ferrule had already formed a purple screen in front of Yu Hui. Yu Hui unwillingly retreated a few steps and glared at Xiao Mu with a vicious glint in his eyes. Ha! Is that all you've got? At the same time, Yu Hui's hands formed two circles of spiritual power and slammed into the small ring. Layer after layer of floor tiles flipped out and lined up in a row. Together, they flew towards Arbor like a tidal wave. Xiao Mu sneered, and with a swipe of her hand, defensive talismans inscribed with ebony appeared beside her. With a tap of her toes, Xiao Mu had already floated far away. Yu Hui immediately chased after him, only to see Arbor's feet move. He had already leaped onto the high roof of the battle hall, looking down coldly from above. With a flip of her hand, several explosion talismans appeared in her hand. Arbor's eyes narrowed. She thought mockingly, a level 9 Great Spirit Master. I wonder if you can withstand the fierce attack of my 10 explosion talismans. In the blink of an eye, several streaks of light flew towards Yu Hui. Ha ha ha. You want to subdue me with this? I'll write again in the morning. I'll give you 8 chapters tomorrow. Chapter 1784. Arbor coldly looked at the man who was laughing wildly, and a trace of mockery flashed in her eyes. Arrogant. The 10 explosion talismans had already reached Yu Hui's side in a flash. Suddenly, they vibrated and exploded. One after another, the entire small ring in the center exploded into pieces. Arbor's figure soared into the air. Yu Hui followed closely behind. He jumped up in the sea of flames and fire, and his figure rose higher. Seeing that he was about to fly out of the sea of fire, Arbor coldly looked at him. Her white hand flew up, and another 30 explosion talismans were thrown down without hesitation. Following that, the fire talismans and the earth talismans attacked Yu Hui as if they were free. This round of burning talismans left everyone dumbfounded. Seeing is believing, hearing is false. Probably no one would believe this kind of thing, right? A 14 or 15-year-old girl using expensive 5 spirit talismans to throw people all over the place. Ah! Ah! Yu Hui, who was struggling to get up in the sea of fire, was pressed down by the stones thrown down by the earth talismans, and fell into the sea of fire. Under the wall of fire, the fire rose up more than 10 meters high. The small ring in the center had been completely destroyed. Arbor was floating in the air, and Yu Hui's figure fell on the first floor of the ring. Ah! Yu Hui could only use his spiritual power to protect his body. His wooden vines were burned to ashes by the flames as soon as they came out of the raging fire. Yu Hui also didn't understand why his cultivation was so much higher than Arbor's, but his wood spiritual power was suppressed by Arbor's fire talismans and earth talismans. He was already a very outstanding genius in the whole family. At this age, he had already broken through to the 3rd level of spiritual master, and had the 6th level of wood spiritual power. Yu Hui's eyes moved slightly, and he couldn't help but understand. It must be that the person who made the 5 spirit talismans had a much higher level of spiritual power than him. But so what? That little girl could throw out 10 or 20 talismans. Could she throw out 100, 200, or 300 talismans? There would always be a time when the talismans would be exhausted, and once they were exhausted, he would be able to. Wait a minute. Yu Hui's neck stiffly turned around to look at the blood-fire phoenix that had suddenly pounced behind him. He didn't even have time to cry out. A blood-red flame instantly sprayed onto his face. Roar! Ouch! Yu Hui felt an intense burning pain in his eyes, and he fell to the ground. As he fell into the sea of fire, he could barely feel the burning pain from his limbs and body. All his senses were focused on his face. Not to mention the burning pain on his face, his eyes seemed to have been burned by the fire and he couldn't even open them. No. His eyes. Covering his face, Yu Hui rolled back and forth in the disaster and howled. He secretly spread out his telegnosis ability and felt Arbor's figure landing on the ground. This little bastard actually dared to destroy his eyes. He wanted her to die without a burial ground. Roar! After an angry roar, Yu Hui struggled to get up. The endless with spiritual power in his hands turned into countless vines and branches, and he chased after Arbor. Arbor didn't even look at him. One of his hands formed a glittering ice sword, and he expressionlessly slashed at the wooden vines in front of him. A mere 6th level with spiritual power dared to show off in front of her. Chapter 1785. Where did this person get his courage and courage from? Arbor's eyes sharpened, and the ice sword in her hand slashed down, chopping off several wooden vines that were darting toward her. At the same time, Yu Hui had already pounced in front of her. He suddenly took out a spiritual energy ball, and with a strange smile, he threw it at Arbor's face. Humph! Arbor's eyes did not waver. She waved her hand to set up defensive talismans in front of her, and at the same time, she quickly flew toward the sky. Boom! After a loud noise. Everyone in the arena was basically in a petrified state. Were they having a competition, or were they tearing down a house? The power of the spiritual energy ball's explosion was very great. Because it chased after Arbor and exploded, the force directly broke through the roof. A large cave appeared at the top, and from time to time, soil rustled and fell down. Young Master Ding, who had heard the news, stared at Yu Hui with a very ugly expression and said angrily, "What are you all standing there for? Go and take that guy down." At this time, Yu Hui, who had already decided to go all out, took out another spiritual energy ball and threw it at young Master Ding, who was sitting in front of the seats. Ah! In the middle of the banquet, the onlookers immediately burst into an uproar. Everyone screamed and jumped up from their chairs. Their faces were pale as they crawled back. The seats were tightly packed together. If the damned ball of spiritual energy were to explode, it would be a huge loss for them. At the very least, thousands of people in the audience would die. Young Master Ding was not a kind person, and he did not have to save these people for the sake of righteousness. However, this thing flew toward him. Did he deserve to be the target of this spiritual energy ball? Moreover, if this big accident happened in the underground arena, it would definitely attract the attention of the Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture master, and it would also affect his business in various places. How could he let it explode? Young Master Ding's handsome face was cold. He suddenly flicked his sleeve and released a wave of wood spiritual energy, and the winding wooden vines instantly wrapped around the spiritual energy ball. In the blink of an eye, the spiritual energy ball was wrapped in layers of vines. The hearts of the people behind him, which had been hanging high in the air, relaxed slightly. Pairs of eyes stared nervously at the sphere that was wrapped in vines and hung high in the air. With a wave of young Master Ding's sleeve, the ball flew backward. After a loud bang, the small arena exploded. The entire ground shook as if it were about to collapse. That was because when Arbor had used the explosion talisman, the defensive layer of the entire arena had been destroyed by her. Now that Yu Hui had thrown out 2 more balls of spiritual energy, the pressure vortex directly broke through the layer of soil above, causing the entire underground fighting ground to tremble violently. Ding Yun's expression was cold and indifferent as he raised his eyes to look towards the direction of the small arena that was completely empty, and his entire handsome face was covered in a layer of frost with a whoosh. That idiot Yu Hui took Jojo away. Come with me immediately. You must find Miss Qiao. Yes. Tang Cheng received the order and immediately began to gather all the people in the arena, following closely behind Ding Yun. Ding Yun's cold gaze swept towards Family Head Yu behind him. That gaze was so cold that Family Head Yu could not help but shiver slightly. Family Yu. Slaughter the entire family. Kill without mercy. Ding Yun's gaze was without any warmth. Chapter 1786. How dare the idiots of the Yu family take Jojo away in front of him? What did they take the Qian Luo underground fighting arena for? Did they think that anyone could cause trouble here? Since they poked the hornet's nest, they had to bear the consequences. The Yu family. Find them. Die. Yes. Master Yu's pupils shrank. He jumped up and was about to say something when he saw a swarm of fighting arena guards swarming towards him. Everyone was stunned and then hurriedly retreated to the sides, fearing that they would be caught in the crossfire. The underground fighting arena was a complete mess. Putting aside the fact that young Sir Ding was looking for trouble with the Yu clan in anger, after Qiao Mu followed Yu Hui out of the hole, the 2 people continued exchanging hundreds of moves in the gap between the soil and the roof. Because the gap was very narrow and short, the tall and strong Yu Hui was very aggrieved. Arbor was very agile and moved very quickly. In a few moves, he opened many small wounds on Yu Hui's body. As the 2 of them fought, they broke through the soil layer and rushed out. After a few more moves, Yu Hui became anxious, and his face became more and more gloomy. Do you feel that the spiritual power in your body is gradually disappearing like a sea of sand? Arbor's cold voice, like a demon from hell, suddenly sounded in his ears. Shut up! Yu Hui roared. What do you want to say? I don't want to hear anything. Arbor glanced at him coldly. You don't want to hear it, but I want to tell you. You will be in this situation for about half an hour. After that, most of the spiritual power in your body will dissipate without a trace. Why? The effect of the medicine will wear off. Idiot, you don't even know this, how dare you take the medicine casually? Did you think that it was so easy to take a pill that could increase one's cultivation by 3 times? Didn't you have to bear the consequences after taking it? An idiot is an idiot. It's useless to talk to him. Yu Hui's eyes were red and his face was full of disbelief. He stared at Arbor and said sternly, You lied to me. Arbor didn't say anything. Instead, he took advantage of Yu Hui's confusion and slashed his ice sword twice on his shoulder. Ah! Yu Hui covered his shoulder and took a few steps back. He glared at Arbor angrily and said, Are you deliberately saying these words to mess with me? Arbor's cold eyes fell on him. You have about 15 minutes left. Damn it! Yu Hui furiously sent out streams of wood spiritual energy towards Arbor. The intertwining vines danced in the air, twisting into a ball and rapidly wrapping around Arbor. A deathbed struggle. Qiao Mu's expression turned severe, and she summoned the startled swan dagger from her conscious. She swiftly chopped down several hundred to 1,000 vines in a tangled mess. She then used her spiritual conscious to guide the startled swan dagger towards Yu Hui's neck. The power that is not yours is not yours. So what if you get it for a short while? At that time, he would still have to spit it all out. Moreover, with Yu Hui's current condition, once the surging energy receded from his body, he would become a cripple in the future. Looking at his current frenzied and irrational appearance, it was likely that his spirit veins had already begun to break. It was just that he was too stupid to notice it. Joe Wood. Yu Hui dodged the menacing startled swan dagger with red eyes. However, the spiritual power emitted by the sharp blade had already drawn a shallow red line on his neck. Chapter 1787. Astonishingly fast. Yu Hui's eyes narrowed slightly. Arbor threw out several dozen talismans, forming a defensive wall in front of her. The slender figure leapt forward, quickly reaching out to catch the startled swan dagger, and then the dagger once again slashed towards Yu Hui's neck. Yu Hui fell backwards, his body sticking close to the ground as he quickly rolled backwards to avoid it. When he raised his head in a sorry state, his long hair was draped over his face, his entire face was ashen, and his lips were an abnormal vermilion color. You! Just as Yu Hui was about to curse out loud, he suddenly reached out and pressed his chest. He felt as if his veins were being stirred and torn apart by something. He let out a miserable howl and fell to the ground with a thud. What kind of person was Arbor? Would she let go of such a great opportunity to kill Yu Hui? But seeing her fly up, her eyes flashed slightly, and the startled swan dagger flew towards Yu Hui with a terrifying spiritual power. Yu Hui, who was rolling on the ground in pain, didn't pay attention for a moment, and the startled swan dagger directly opened a wound on his face. He screamed and reached out to cover his face, rolling back and forth, cursing without thinking, "Arbor, you slut." Ah! The startled swan dagger cut off a thin piece of flesh from his face. Yu Hui's cursing was stopped in his throat by the pain on his face, and his entire body was in so much pain that he was rolling on the ground in a sorry state. The medicine's effect has worn off. How does it feel? Arbor said coldly, her eyes clearly without any emotion, looking at him with eyes full of disgust, as if she was looking at something dirty. Speak, who sent you to kill me? She was originally an intelligent and quick-witted girl. With Yu Hui's attitude, if she still couldn't guess by now that Yu Hui was ordered by someone, then she was really stupid. Although the trash pill in Yu Hui's hand wasn't anything good, it was definitely not something that the current Shantian Hall's pharmacists could refine. Ah! 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 Yu Hui held his head, rolling back and forth twice, and then reluctantly raised his head to look at the cold-faced girl in front of him. Suddenly, a strange smile appeared on his face. Xiao Mu was completely startled, and she only felt a chill run down her back. An inexplicable sense of crisis mixed with an intuition of impending danger assaulted her from behind. Arbor didn't say anything and moved his feet. With a backhand, he sent a series of meteors scattered towards the back. A ghastly howl came from behind. As the wind blew, a rotting figure suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. It was a corpse puppet. Moreover, it seemed to be something that far surpassed a mid-level zombie. His speed was already comparable to a level 10 great spiritual master, and the power of his slash was also very strong. The wind generated by the slash made Arbor's little face hurt slightly. Moreover, this undead puppet had been hiding in the dark all this time. It knew how to detect the best time to launch a sneak attack. It could be said that this was a very smart undead puppet. Arbor had never seen or heard of such a thing before. Ha ha ha, ha ha. Insolent laughter came from Yu Hui's mouth. He barely managed to lift himself up and staggered to his feet. His eyes contained a venomous glint as he stared fixedly at Xiao Mu and shrieked with laughter, "Little brat, you think you've won for sure? Don't you know that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind?" Ha 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 ha. He hated this girl in front of him the most. That hateful paralyzed face. It was clearly such a dangerous time, but she wasn't the least bit moved. Chapter 1788. Let me tell you, even if I'm destined to die here today, you definitely won't survive. After saying that, he took out a bamboo whistle and blew hard into it. The advanced-level zombie behind Xiao Mu immediately moved agitatedly, abruptly stretching out a pair of rotting arms to hug Xiao Mu. Ha 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 ha. Yu Hui's eyes flashed with malice. His whole body trembled as he screamed angrily, "Go to hell! Go to hell!" The zombie straightened its back. Its figure appeared very tall, taller than Arbor by a head. Seeing the pair of rotting arms encircling her, Xiao Mu could even see the string of rotting flesh and disgusting worms hanging from the arms. However, her eyes remained unmoved. Her small face was still expressionless. She raised her hand expressionlessly and shot 3 black gold arrows at the zombie. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The 3 arrows were shot simultaneously. 2 of the arrowheads pierced the zombie's arms, while the other pierced the zombie's leg. However, this didn't stop the zombie from moving towards her at all. Seeing that the zombie's claws were about to grab her shoulder, Arbor picked up a washboard and smashed it at the rotting hand. At most, after smashing the zombie, she didn't care about the washboard. It was really too disgusting. The zombie's claws didn't break after being smashed by the spirit weapon. This was already within Arbor's expectations. After all, the zombie in front of her was comparable to a level 10 Great Spirit Master. Unlike that 3-legged cat Yu Hui, who was still so weak even after taking medicine and forcefully becoming a level 9 Spirit Master. Arbor coldly glanced at it and hit the zombie with the washboard again. Although the zombie wasn't seriously injured, it was pushed back a few inches by the collision of the 2 spiritual forces and took a few steps back. The spiritual water flowing in Arbor's hand instantly turned into an ice sword. Just as she picked up the sword and was about to pounce on the zombie, Arbor's expression suddenly changed. She felt the spiritual power surging in her body continuously rise. This feeling. It seemed like she was about to advance. Damn it! Previously, when she saw that little fatty, Qi Xian, and the others had all improved, she was definitely faking it if she said that she was not worried. He had been looking forward to advancing to the spirit realm for so many days, but who would have thought that she would advance at such a critical moment? If this wasn't cheating, then what was? Arbor frowned slightly, and his small hands subconsciously clenched into fists. Qiu, pull me into Paradise Planet immediately. She couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with Yu Hui. She would fight with them after she leveled up. However, she soon discovered that her mental communication with Qiu had failed. Her face darkened. She immediately understood the reason for her failure. This breakthrough was a huge leap from the profound realm to the soul realm. As he advanced, the entire star field would change as well. All of the profound domains, including Paradise Planet, would probably be upgraded to spirit domains. Therefore, it was possible that he had suddenly cut off his connection with the star field. However, all of this happened so suddenly that she was caught off guard. Now, she felt that something was wrong. He raised his hand and shot an arrow. After forcing the high-level zombie to take 2 steps back, Arbor turned his head and decisively dashed into the distance. Yu Hui raised his bamboo whistle and blew it twice. He immediately screamed, "Chase!" He covered his face and stumbled forward. As soon as he raised his eyes, he saw the zombie fly past him at an extremely fast speed. There was still 3 chapters left. It would probably be 11 o'clock. Chapter 1789. Yu Hui's hair was disheveled as he chased after the high-level zombie like a madman. He followed Arbor as fast as he could. Suddenly, a blazing blood phoenix swooped down from the sky. One of Yu Hui's eyes was severely burned and could only be half squinted. Although the other eye could barely see, it still felt blurry. At this time, his body instinctively felt that there was danger approaching. He hurriedly rolled on the ground and instantly opened a defensive barrier. The blazing blood phoenix's claw had already landed on his back. The piercing and burning pain made him scream uncontrollably. Yu Hui laid down on the ground and subconsciously covered his head with his hands. He felt the fire phoenix chasing after him. It angrily spat out several flames, and on the spot, he was covered in flames. He kept rolling back and forth on the ground, patting away the raging flames on his body. Yu Hui was secretly shocked. He thought that he was going to die. Who would have thought that the blazing blood phoenix didn't take advantage of the opportunity to chase after him and take his life? Instead, it let out a shrill cry and flew out from the top of his head, spewing out several tumbling waves of fire towards the high-level corpse puppet. Obviously, Arbor was in danger. The phoenix didn't have time to care about him and hurriedly ran to save its little master. Yu Hui heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Suddenly, he felt as if someone had slapped him hard in the stomach. Before he could even gasp for breath, he found that his body had been swept away like a rag. Yu Hui screamed. When he caught his breath, he found that he was almost killed on the spot by a fat squirrel's tail. At this time, he was hanging on a tree, dying. His eyes were blurry as he stared at Arbor, who was fighting the high-level zombie not far away. "Kill her, kill her, kill her." Yu Hui silently prayed with grievance. On the other side, how could Arbor dare to let Chirps use its tail to hit the zombie? She didn't want their claws to touch the zombie at all. There were too many uncertain factors. Who knew if Chirps and the others would also turn into zombies if they were infected with the zombie poison in its body? Arbor took precautions and hurriedly put the fat squirrel and the snow leopard into his spirit beast space for the time being. As for the blood-blaze phoenix, it could avoid danger as long as it didn't use its claws to tear apart that disgusting high-level zombie. Actually, if he could use Paradise Planet now, he could just release the golem treasure to deal with them first. In any case, mechanical puppets were not made of real flesh and blood, so they did not have to worry about being scratched by zombie puppets. Naturally, they did not have to worry so much. In this situation, Arbor was in a passive position. Hua. Arbor didn't want to deal with this high-level zombie any longer. Right now, the most important thing for her was to leave this place and find a quiet environment to advance her cultivation. The blazing blood fire phoenix was telepathically connected to her, so it naturally knew why its little master was calling for it. He swooped down towards her. Arbor also stood on his tiptoes and lightly tapped the ground. He had just flown a few feet when he wanted to jump onto the phoenix's back. The high-level corpse puppet let out a fierce roar. Arbor's eyes narrowed. She suddenly realized that the high-level zombie had probably sensed her intention to run away. This zombie probably didn't have a human appearance, but its way of thinking was perfectly close to a human's. This thought merely flashed through Xiao Mu's mind, and she had already leaped onto the bloodfire phoenix's back. The human and beast were just about to leave and they suddenly heard a roar from the ground. Chapter 1790. That advanced-level zombie soared up from an extremely strange and tricky angle and suddenly dashed in front of Xiao Mu while suspended in midair. Although he was only in the middle of the infant stage, his attack and speed were not comparable to this high-level corpse puppet. Just as the high-level corpse puppet rushed to Arbor's side, the phoenix flapped its wings and dodged to the side with Arbor on its back. At this time, it turned around and flew away. "Ayo!" The high-level corpse puppet's unwilling roar came from behind. For some reason, Xiao Mu felt a bit flustered, and she reflexively turned around to look. She saw the high-level zombie leap in the air and arrive behind Xiao Mu in 2 leaps. Arbor did not hesitate to throw a few ice blades at it. Suddenly, she felt a slight chill in her hands. She couldn't help but feel bad. This cold Yin aura was very similar to the Yin power in the mysterious Yin charm. This corpse puppet could use the Yin power to attack her. Thinking of this, she quickly opened a speed talisman and a strength talisman, threw them on the back of the bloodfire phoenix, and said in a deep voice, "Let's go." As soon as the words fell, she felt a strong wind coming from behind. Arbor quickly turned her head and saw that the two arms of the corpse puppet were all separated from the body and had come to the back of her head. Cold sweat came out of her heart. Arbor shot 2 arrows to stop the 2 severed arms from continuing to fly in front of her. But before she could breathe a sigh of relief, she saw the 10 fingers of the pair of rotten hands fly together, like sharp hidden weapons shooting straight at her face. This attack was simply impossible to guard against. Arbor didn't realize that the high-level corpse puppet could separate its limbs from its body and suffered a loss. At this moment, seeing the 10 fingers flying towards him, he hurriedly wrapped himself in a round eggshell defensive barrier. His heart slightly alarmed, he threw out a concealed weapon, blocking the 10 fingers outside of his body. Feeling a sudden pain on her arm, Arbor looked down in disbelief. She saw a tiny, palm-sized zombie bird hanging from her left forearm. Although she didn't feel much pain when it bit her forearm, Xiaomu only felt a chill creeping up from the bottom of her heart. Her eyes widened in an instant. She was tricked. She was tricked by a high-level corpse puppet. Just now, the corpse puppet had chased after her ferociously, and its limbs had separated from its body to attack her. Everything was a smokescreen to cover the little corpse bird's approach. Obviously, when all her attention was on the high-level zombie puppet, the corpse bird had sneaked into her defensive barrier without anyone noticing. This high-level corpse puppet with an IQ comparable to a human's didn't make a move, but once it made a move, it must complete the task of killing Arbor. Arbor's eyes became a little dazed for a moment, and her mind was in a mess. However, her movements were not slow. First, she tore off the corpse bird from her arm. Then, 5 cold sharp awls appeared on her 5 fingers and pierced into the corpse bird's small head. She mercilessly pierced the corpse bird's head and body over and over again until it was riddled with holes and broken into pieces. Then, with a squeeze of her hand, she burned the corpse bird that dared to harm her body into ashes. Arbor's eyes were filled with a strong hatred and murderous intent. She raised her head and looked directly at the high-level corpse puppet. Her heart was filled with anger and her eyes were cold. Chapter 1791. She still had a lot of things to do. She hadn't fulfilled her promise to her mother, and she hadn't even seen her lotus. Was she going to die like this? She looked down at the small bite wound on her forearm. At this time, the wound had already been healed by her body, and there was no trace of it at all. Arbor couldn't help but feel a little confused, but she was still worried. Although the wound on the surface had disappeared, the corpse poison might have already entered her body. After taking a few elixirs, Arbor jumped down from the back of the Bloodfire Phoenix. She was afraid of being scratched before, so she was a little restrained. Now that she had been bitten, what was there to be afraid of? Arbor's heart was boiling with anger. As if feeling her emotions, the high-level corpse puppet shrank back a little, and then rushed up again. Arbor looked at the corpse puppet's rotten arm and fingers that had returned to their original state, and clenched her fists hard. The corpse puppet suddenly opened its hands, and countless little corpse birds flew out from under its armpits, fluttering toward Arbor. Arbor raised her sleeve to cover half of her face, and suddenly heard a familiar voice, "Jojo." A shadow suddenly appeared beside her and blocked her way without saying a word. A dark flame silently burned on the ground. Mo Lien. Arbor's watery eyes turned red in an instant. It was fine if she didn't see him, but when she suddenly saw him, even if it was just a faint shadow, she could feel that her heart was overflowing with thoughts of him. Mo Lien's shadow didn't seem to be able to say much, and he just turned his head and looked at her deeply. With a wave of his hand, the sacred fire burned the ground and rose up. In just a moment, the group of little corpse birds were all burned to ashes. Then the black fire turned into a long black sword, and in a breath, it went straight through the head of the high-level corpse puppet. Ding-dang, a light sound was heard. A light silver crystal core fell out of the high-level zombie's head. The color was very pure, unlike the disgusting zombie's appearance. Mo Lien turned around and opened her arms to hug her. "Jojo, I was worried about you. I'll be back soon." The faint word, "come," turned into a final note, disappearing into the air. His figure passed through her body, like a gentle breeze brushing past her cheeks. The little guy raised a pair of small arms and made a gesture of wanting to hug him. Then, his shadow dissipated. It was one thing to know that he was thousands of miles away from him and that a wisp of his divine sense couldn't last for too long, but it was another thing to see him dissipate in less than a minute. Xiao Mu's small face scrunched up in grievance, and she pitifully muttered, "Mo Lien, you might not be able to see me again in the future." "Mistress." Qiuqiu's voice rang in her ears like the sound of nature. Then, she felt her body become light, and she was pulled into Paradise Planet. On the other side, Yu Hui, who was lying on a tree trunk and didn't dare to disturb Mo Lien's shadow, breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he suddenly saw Arbor's figure disappear. There seemed to be a trace of the mystic domain's aura flowing in the air. Although Yu Hui was at his last breath, he was so excited that his whole body started to tremble. It's the mystic domain, it's the aura of the mystic domain. That little girl has a secret. Don't worry. The author is close. Chapter 1792. Ha 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 ha. He had inadvertently learned that the little girl had such a big secret. Yu Hui half squinted his blurry eyes and tried to climb down from the tree trunk. He could already imagine that as long as this news spread out, that damned stinky girl would be hunted down by the entire Shun Tian mansion. Her ending would be miserable. Ha, ha ha. Cough, cough, cough. Yu Hui moved his battered body and slid down the tree inch by inch. Suddenly, he heard the cry of a phoenix and his heart shrank. He barely managed to turn the defensive ring in his hand. Just as he activated the defensive barrier, he felt a heatwave rush toward him and bombarded his body. The defensive barrier was completely shattered. Yu Hui fell down from the tree and landed on the ground with his limbs facing the sky. Ah, cough, cough. Yu Hui felt that his internal organs were almost overturned by the impact. He spat out a mouthful of blood. His vision was blurred and he couldn't see anything clearly. In a daze, he seemed to feel something flying down from the sky. If Yu Hui could see at this moment, he would definitely see the sky filled with red clouds and flames shooting towards him like bullets of fire. He propped up his battered body and his eyes flashed with hatred. Inch by inch, he tried to climb out of the firewall. Arbor, that damned girl, has the mysterious domain. Arbor has the mysterious domain. Even if this secret couldn't be told to the world, he had to tell his father first that he rummaged through his inner world for the communication jade talisman. Just as he took it out, he heard a soft buzzing sound in the air. Suddenly, he felt a chill on his neck. He lowered his head in shock and saw a flying dagger open a bloody hole in his neck. It came out from the back of his neck. Cough, cough, cough. Yu Hui subconsciously wanted to reach out and press his bleeding throat. He tried to raise his head and see the blurry figure in front of him. Xiao, Arbor, it's Arbor. She actually came back. She probably remembered that there was still a fly like him that had not been dealt with yet. Good, what a ruthless method. She killed people without blinking an eye. Yu Hui died with a grudge in his heart. He collapsed to the ground, unable to get up again. The startled swan dagger pierced 7 to 8 bloody holes in Yu Hui's body before returning to Arbor's hand. Looking at the shiny dagger again, there was not a single trace of blood left on it. It was abnormally clean and beautiful. Xiao Mu's small face was pale as she pursed her lips. She put away that silver crystal core that had fallen to the ground and coldly retracted her gaze as she gazed at Yu Hui, who had turned into ashes under the roasting of the phoenix flames. Let's go. Arbor recalled the blazing blood fiery phoenix and was once again brought into Paradise Planet by Little Tree. This time, she only felt the surging spiritual energy in her body run amok, and she could no longer control herself and spat out a mouthful of blood. He should have immediately found a quiet place to meditate and gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth when he sensed that he was about to ascend to the spirit realm. With such a delay, he didn't know if there would be any repercussions for Arbor. At this time, Paradise Planet was also very unstable. The scenery in front of him looked distorted and blurry. Space seemed to be distorted and slowly shattered. Master, don't worry. Paradise Planet has been transformed into a spirit realm along with you. You should swallow this first. As he spoke, a small green and furry fruit fell into Arbor's hand. Chapter 1793. Arbor reached out to hold the fruit and looked around. Little Ball, where are you? Little Ball didn't make a sound, but the little water baby stumbled over to her leg in the bumpy space. It reached out two transparent little hands and hugged the corner of Arbor's skirt, urging, Master Silver, hurry up and eat it. Arbor also knew that her situation was very bad. Her arm was bitten by a high-level corpse bird, and if nothing unexpected happened, she would turn into a corpse in less than a quarter of an hour. But now she could clearly feel that there seemed to be an invisible force in her body that was suppressing the corpse poison. Although she was a little confused, Arbor didn't have time to think too much about it. Under the little water's urging, she hurriedly swallowed the fruit. Where did this fruit come from? Arbor hurriedly asked, Where's Little Ball? Why didn't it come out to see me? The little water baby immediately lowered its head, sobbing and not daring to answer. Where's Little Ball? Arbor had a bad premonition in her heart. She hurriedly bent down and grabbed the little water baby, asking with a serious expression, Hurry up and tell me the truth. Wah, just now, Master was bitten by that thing. Little Ball asked Little Ball and me to help accelerate its growth. Let it blossom and bear fruit quickly. Arbor's heart thumped fiercely. And then? This one. Is it a holy fruit? She remembered that Little Ball once told her that the little tree could blossom and bear fruit, and the holy fruit it bore could at least make her cultivation advance by leaps and bounds by 2 levels. So she had always thought that Little Ball's fruit was at most used for advancement. But it turned out that it could get rid of the corpse poison. Then where's Little Ball? Arbor was anxious, and her voice couldn't help but become more severe. Little Ball was still in the late stage of its infancy. If it was forcefully accelerated, it definitely wouldn't have any benefits. The little water baby was frightened by Arbor, crying out loud. Little Ball fainted, Little Ball is taking care of it. Arbor's eyes turned red, and she struggled to use her inner vision to look at Little Ball. The little water child hurriedly hugged her and said, Master, you should advance first. If you continue like this, the spiritual energy in your body will explode. No, I want to see Chocho first, Arbor said, clenching his fists. Ever since she had been reborn, Chocho had always taken care of her, helped her, and given her too much. How could she watch it be in danger? Master. The little water baby hugged her and cried, Master, your skin is bleeding. You have to block off your 5 senses immediately and enter secluded cultivation. Master, you can't delay any longer. How could Arbor still listen to the water child's words at this time? She anxiously sank into her inner vision. He saw that the small tree in his dantian was indeed luxuriant. Although it was not a towering tree, at least it had been forcibly upgraded to the late stage of growth compared to its appearance in the late stage of infancy. It had been upgraded by a whole stage. However, Little Ball's current situation was very bad. Its roots were rapidly withering, and its leaves were also slowly curling up and falling. Little Ball was wrapped around Little Ball's roots, nourishing and nurturing it. However, looking at its constantly shrinking appearance, it was obvious that the late-stage Little Ball was completely unable to keep up with the shrinking of the small tree. Little Ball, how can I help you? How can I help you? Arbor's eyes immediately reddened, and tears flowed out of her eyes uncontrollably. Chapter 1794. Looking at Wuxia, who looked like it was about to die, Arbor's heart ached and she panicked. It was as if a yellowed and ancient scene had floated past her eyes. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who hugged half a dead tree and floated in the void, as if she had been drifting for countless years. Just like that, each person in one piece of dead tree, the two of them relied on each other as companions. Wuxia. In the blink of an eye, the sapling shrunk back to its original size. Moreover, it looked even worse than when they first met. Arbor was at a loss and said in panic, "Wuxia, wait here. I'll go to the frigid pool to find you a piece of black spirit jade. You'll definitely recover after you absorb it." "Master! Master!" The little water child was about to go crazy. It watched as its little master stumbled and ran through the twisted paradise planet, heading for the frigid pool behind the peach orchard slope. "Master!" When the little water child stumbled and crawled to the frigid pool, it saw that its little master had already jumped in without a care for anything else. In a hurry, the little water child also hurriedly jumped into the frigid pool, sliding its little hands and feet with all its might to get closer to its master. Its little master's paddling speed was too fast. As soon as she entered the water, she was like a fish that could breathe, swimming freely in the pool. Even the innate holy water, which was able to merge with any water in the world, was a little surprised. This kind of swimming speed was not like that of a normal human. Arbor shot to the bottom of the frigid pool, and at this time, a red figure also desperately paddled to her side. "Not here." Arbor blankly turned to look at the newcomer. The youth in front of her was about 14 or 15 years old. There was a fire mark between his eyebrows, and his bright red short hair was very eye-catching. Fire? Yes. As long as it was a divine beast, it could transform, not to mention a holy beast like the Bloodblaze Phoenix. It was just that under normal circumstances, beasts did not like to transform into human form. In human form, their strength and speed could not be compared to their beast form. "Come with me, it's here." The Bloodblaze Phoenix had relied on swallowing the black spirit jade at the bottom of the frigid pool to break out of its eggshell, so he naturally knew the location of the black spirit jade. Right now, Xiao Mu hated herself for slacking off earlier. If he had come to the bottom of the pond earlier to ascertain the location of the profound spirit jade, he wouldn't have had to go through the trouble of diving to the bottom of the pond. He would have been able to use his spiritual sense to obtain it. "Master." The Bloodfire Phoenix turned around to look at her, only to realize that Arbor had already swum to its side. The Bloodblaze Phoenix couldn't help but feel a little surprised. When the little master was paddling, there was no sound at all. It was as if the little master had completely merged with the cold pond. Like a fish in water, he was extremely fast. There are many profound spirit jades buried under the fine sand at the bottom of this lake. Arbor hurriedly swam down and pushed aside the layer of white sand below. Sure enough, he saw a lot of black spirit jade. Arbor threw more than half of the profound spirit jade into his inner world, then turned around and swam towards the surface of the cold pond. "Master, there's actually a secret door hidden under the profound spirit jade." The Bloodblaze Phoenix couldn't help but sigh when he saw that she was completely ignoring him and only focused on swimming towards the cold pond. At this time, no matter what he said to his little master, she wouldn't be able to hear him. Right now, she was completely focused on Little Ball. But the Bloodblaze Phoenix swam forward, his gaze landing on the drops of blood seeping out of her arm. He inwardly frowned. "You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.